I call the meeting to order. Good evening and welcome to the March 3rd, 2026 business meeting of your Ashland City Council. Councilor Henson will offer the land acknowledgement.
Thank you, Mayor. It's my honor. We acknowledge and honor the Aboriginal people on whose ancestral homelands we work, the Irukutsun Band of the Shasta Nation, as well as the diverse and vibrant Native communities who make up their home here today. We honor the first stewards in the Rogue Valley and the lands we love and depend on, tribes with ancestral lands in and surrounding the geography of the Ashland watershed, including the original past, present, and future indigenous habitants of the Shasta, Tequilma, and Athabascan people. We also recognize and acknowledge the Shasta village of Quacacah, where the Crow Lights, that is now the Ashland City Plaza.
Thank you. And Councilor Sherrill will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill.
Here.
Dale.
Here.
Bloom.
Here.
Graham.
Here.
Kaplan.
Here.
Duquesne. Here. Hanson.
Here.
Thank you. We are now to Mayor's announcements. I want to start by acknowledging what has happened in our community over this last week. Our hearts are heavy with the grief that has overtaken our community in the wake of the tragic accident that took 2 beautiful young lives and injured 3 others. Words feel inadequate at a time like this, but actions matter. And I know our community is embracing the families who lost their beloved children. Our community is reaching out to hold those who knew and loved these 2 young women. And our community is caring for the families whose children are recovering from the accident. In gathering as a community at the vigil at the high school, I was reminded of the power of community when it walks alongside those who are grieving and stays with them until they make their way through. Thank you to our first responders who helped our young people that night. Thank you to everyone who is stepping forward to support all who have been devastated by this accident. May we continue to find ways to care for one another and to cherish the memory of 2 bright young souls taken too soon. Would you please join me in a moment of silence? Thank you. If you have come this evening to speak to the council, the way that you will do that is by signing up. Are we out of sheets in that corner? They're in the front. In the lobby, you'll find the sign-up sheets. Please fill them out and put them in the tray here by our recorder. Make sure when you do that you identify for us whether you are here to speak with us on an agenda item by writing the agenda item down on the form, or if you're here to speak about something that is not on the agenda, you will speak to us during public forum, so please also indicate that. When you do that, it allows us to make sure that we bring you up at the correct time. And also, please, if you've come to speak to us about an agenda item, please make sure that you have put your paper in before we start that agenda item, because that will help us manage the time for that particular topic. A couple of additional items. The If I Were Mayor contest is coming up to its deadline. So this upcoming, well, next Friday, the 13th, is the deadline. So if you know any young people who would like to share their thoughts about what they would do if they were mayor of our fine city, please make sure that they get their submissions in ahead of the deadline. And lastly, for mayor's announcements, I want to offer a proclamation in honor of National Women's History Month. Whereas American women of every race, class, and ethnic background have made historic contributions to the growth and strength of our nation in countless recorded and unrecorded ways. Whereas American women constitute a significant portion of the labor force working inside and outside the home. Whereas American women have played a unique role throughout the history of our nation by providing the majority of the volunteer labor force. Whereas American women were particularly important in the establishment of early charitable, philanthropic, and cultural institutions. Whereas American women have served our country courageously in the military. Whereas American women have been leaders not only in securing their own rights of suffrage and equal opportunity, but also in the abolitionist movement, the emancipation movement, the industrial labor movement, the civil rights movement, and the peace movement. And whereas American women find themselves in a situation where the gains made through hard work and persistence over many decades are now under significant threat. Now, therefore, I, Tanya Graham, Mayor of the City of Ashland, Oregon, on behalf of the City Council, do hereby acknowledge March as National Women's History Month and call upon the people of Ashland to observe this day with appropriate reflection, learning, and a renewed commitment to the equality of women. In Ashland, we are better together. Thank you. We now move on to approval of minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes? Okay, the floor is open for a motion to approve the minutes. Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve the minutes of February 2nd and February 3rd, 2026.
Second.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
We do not have anything on our consent agenda this evening, so we'll move through that quickly. And now we are to special presentations. Sabrina?
Yes, tonight we have the chair of the 2200 Ad Hoc Committee here, Noah Wertheiser, to discuss kind of the progress that Ad Hoc Committee has made and get feedback from the City Council. So we have a short PowerPoint presentation, and there was a report in the packet for tonight. So Noah will roll through that, and we'll go from there.
What would be the best setup for this?
I think if you,
The three dots.
yeah.
Oh, look at that.
There you go.
Great. Okay, cuts off a little bit at the bottom, but that's all right. Okay, good evening, Mayor and Council. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide an update on the work of the 2200 Ashland Street Committee. My name is Noah Wertheiser. I'm the chair of the committee, and tonight I'd like to talk about where we are in the process, the structure of the work, and some of the key draft concepts that are beginning to emerge. I'd also like to stress right at the outset, before I dig into any of the details, that these concepts and drafted content, they're all preliminary. They were not voted on by the committee as approved recommendations to present to council in completion. I think it would be a mistake to finalize recommendations without being able to see all the components together. Not to mention the fact that we're still conducting interviews, doing community engagement. We had a number yesterday, we had a couple today. A community feedback session, there's going to be one in April, and I don't want to see any of that, any of the recommendations completed before we have that opportunity. So, want to give, maybe? Hey, right on to the questions, cool.
Wow, it's really going for it.
There we go. Start off by providing some quick catch-up since this was last discussed. It's been a chunk of time. The committee was charged with developing a site facility plan, identifying potential approaches for services and accountability within the existing building, and preparing guidelines, guiding documents for that, outlining a communication and engagement plan, and exploring options for interim use and long-term use for the site. Our work builds directly on the original ad hoc committee's work, where they put together the recommendations for the concepts, and we are working towards the implementation of those. With a 6-month timeline, the work is significant, and so we decided to separate into work groups: site planning and development work group and the services and accountability work group. These work groups conducted extensive research into the two, I suppose, primary charges. The full committee has been reviewing and refining that work in the progress update that we're presenting now. We're here tonight to share the work where it stands and request kind of a high-level direction that will help shape the next bout of drafting that we have, and maybe potential recommendations when they come to you at the end of April, beginning of May. Nope. 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 Yes. So let's start on with the site planning and development work. Great. We met with regional housing providers, including ORA, OHRA, Rogue Retreat, Housing Authority of Jackson County. We also consulted with city planning and development staff to better understand zoning, building envelope, and development constraints. In addition, we conducted a lot of research into local and regional successful housing models so that we could utilize those for reference. One idea under discussion is holding preliminary feasibility conversations with potential developers prior to issuing a formal RFP so that we can kind of gauge interest and explore feasibility of the site prior to the RFP. The goal thus far has been to keep working parameters relatively broad. Broad parameters allow for a much greater range of possibilities and maybe more interest from developers and partners. The working framework currently includes possible housing models, potential populations to serve, and general designs and size configurations. The work group explored several housing models consistent with the prior master plan framework, including tiny home village concepts, multi-unit efficiency apartments, multi-story or multiplex configurations, and container-based constructions. One general direction being explored is that the city would seek a qualified entity or a consortium of entities to develop housing that serves one or more of the following population needs: permanent supported housing, transitional, long-term transitional housing, low-income households at or below 60% area median income, seniors at or below 60% area median income, and working households all at or below 80% area median income. Additional development considerations have surfaced, including approximately 300 square feet minimum per unit, with larger units for families, persons with disabilities. Innovative and cost design is particularly important as the site is a weird site. It is a triangle separated by a big old building in the middle. Unconventional shape means unconventional design, so that's important. Compatibility with surrounding neighborhood standards, including like shared spaces and landscaping, is really important. And the long-term sustainability is also a heavy need. Rent affordability targeted at approximately 30% of income thresholds has been discussed as a potential benchmark. That's kind of how affordable, capital A, affordable housing is usually designed. And the developer would likely need to show how that is sustainable to the model that they're presenting. Before I move to services and accountability, would this be a good time to pause, or would you like me to just move right along?
Take a pause. Are there any questions? Councilor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Thanks. No, I appreciate this. So just so I'm connecting the dots here, the housing models that are listed here and the site planning is connected directly to what the first housing or the first ad hoc committee had recommended as their approved uses. Is that correct?
Yes.
This is just, that was the what, this is the how that you're.
This is the how.
Okay.
Yep.
So that matches. Okay, thank you.
Councilor Hanson?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Noah. Could you refresh our memory? When we talk about apartments on this odd-shaped piece of land, do you know what the zoning is? Like what our possibilities are there? I forget.
I don't know the exact zoning code. I can tell you that area is, we would be allowed to build up to 5 stories, 60 feet with the affordable aspect.
Okay.
Yeah, so
And-
it's a residential zone of some kind, and I don't know exactly which one it is.
And there are other buildings in the neighborhood that are multi-story. Across the street near the YMCA, there's a multi-story building over there.
That's right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Sherrill.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Noah. In relation to design and size, does the committee have an overall outline of what they want to see for density? I mean, can you share with everybody what that might be? Are we talking 50 units, 200 units?
It's a range depending on the housing type. So for example, if it's transitional housing, the recommendations we've received, particularly from Housing Authority of Jackson County, is not to go up or not to go up very far. If it's something like permanent supported housing or efficiency apartments, up would be fine. So it totally depends, and then the size, the amount in which you go up into the air would increase certainly the number of households that you could do. So it's a very large range.
And I'm looking for what's max density? Is there a cap? I mean, are we limited if we went wall to wall, setback to setback? Could we get 300 units there, 200? Do we have an idea of what max density would be? We don't.
Do not, no.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, thanks, Noah. So my understanding, these are obviously fairly broad models, broad populations. What I understood you to say is that the philosophy here is to start going out with a letter of interest and get expressions of interest from different organizations that could be a partner on this, and then see what their best ideas might be for any one of these items, and then
One or multiple, yes.
one or multiple, and then once there's that interest, then draft the RFP that would say hone in on one specific thing. Is
Yeah.
that right?
Yeah.
Okay, so a two-step process. Thanks.
Move right along. Services and accountability. This is kind of the preliminary work. So the work group focused on site governance, structure, operational clarity, accountability systems. Central concept under discussion for administration of the site is what we're lovingly calling a coordinating agency model. So under this approach, the city would issue a single master lease or equivalent contract type to one coordinating agency or consortium of agencies. And I'll talk a little bit more on that in just a minute. And then key draft elements under development are a good neighbor agreement framework, which is in your packets, and a structured service category list, which I would like to amend in a minute, and then a clear operational and financial responsibility expectation for that body. A good neighbor draft agreement draft framework has been developed to establish clear expectations for participant conduct both on-site and within the defined geographic zones that are in that agreement surrounding the property. The purpose is to reinforce the participants that participants attend for scheduled services and conduct themselves in a manner that's respectful to the surrounding neighborhood, businesses, and to residents. The agreement outlines expectations related to site safety and cleanliness and the like. It is structured as a condition of participation on that site. So the idea is they, in violation of that agreement, they would be exited from the site, not from the services that could be provided there, providing that, for example, a service provider who has provides services mostly in Medford, but now utilizes the space there, they could still receive services from that organization. They just would not be allowed back onto the site. Those pathways for review and escalation for the community to say, hey, they're not following this agreement. They have not been fully defined. For example, in the current draft TLC section 9, and they are nice and slim. So we're working in concert with staff, with members of the business and residential community in the area to ensure that the process is really effective and lays out those responsibilities really clearly. In addition, the committee has discussed the idea that a future RFP applicants could be asked to propose self-accountability practices, things that promote contribution and pride and and positive participation. Examples to this could be a community cleanup day, right, or peer support leadership roles within the site. Based on significant research into service provision and service gaps related to homelessness, including the region's community needs assessment, the homelessness services assessment report, and the local continuum of care's gaps analysis, we compiled a draft list of service categories with example service providers that offer those services. In a small oversight, I forgot to add community health as one of those categories. So it's not included in that list, but that is one of them. Under the coordinating agency model concepts, we've explored the potential use of contracting tools such as a triple net lease or a master lease or something very similar as an agreement, as a mechanism really for engaging an organization, a consortium of organizations to operate and manage the site completely, including administration of the Good Neighbor Agreement and any related policies. In this working model, the organization would oversee things like appointment scheduling. They would oversee things like participation agreement compliance and security, very important security, office staffing, provider accountability, as well as all operation expenses and utilities for the building. The work group also discussed structuring this as a letter of intent as well, in a similar fashion to the other, with intentional flexibility. Rather than prescribing more rigid methods, the city could define desired outcomes and performance standards at the outset, specific performance standards at the outset, and then allow the coordinating agency to propose proven operational policies and procedures in response to those. Under this concept, the contract would not necessarily be limited solely to direct service providers. It could also be for coordinating nonprofits or consortium models if they could demonstrate the capacity to manage operations and assure accountability. So it wouldn't necessarily have to be a service provider nonprofit. This would be framed as a location also, I want to note, as a place where services will be provided, not as a place for navigation where services would be provided elsewhere and a participant would have to go somewhere else to receive those services. We wanted to make sure that that is something we've discussed at length, that the services be provided on site. Okay, now's a good natural stopping.
Councillor Blue?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Noah. Appreciate you being here. So the Good Neighbor Agreement, I want to kind of hone in on that.
Oh, yeah.
I obviously, because I have a liaison to the committee, I've seen what these defined impact zones. Could you speak a little bit more to that and how they kind of, you've got multiple zones and kind of, again, important note is that there is going to be respect and behavior expectations, and violation of those would be removal from the site, and maybe speak a little bit about how those behavior expectations are being developed.
Yeah, absolutely. So there are best practices. So until work within this committee, neither I nor anybody that we had worked with had known about Good Neighbor Agreements to the extent that they are used all over the nation and successfully. They are methods of holding participants of a program accountable for, like you said, for to make sure that the neighborhood is kept clean and safe, and also as a positive addition to the community and not just a drain, which I think has been a vocalized fear for quite some time. So one of the things that I think is important to note is that we have zone standards, like you said. There's a Zone A, Zone B, and Zone C, and those are loosely defined in the packet on a map, and they can totally be redrawn, but they are to say within the site, here are your expectations. Within 100 feet of the site, here are your expectations, and within the broader community up to X amount of space, here are your expectations. And they range in everything from cleanliness and respect and order to more concrete things like you will not have drugs or paraphernalia on site, right? And you will treat other participants with respect, not just in kindness, but in safety, right? So those kinds of things. The idea is that there will likely be a list of some of those things that are non-negotiable, zero tolerance, and there are others that will be on the coordinating agency to work with that participant to raise the level of their behavior. So there's kind of a broad range in there. That's the goal. Yeah.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, great, thanks. I really appreciate this good neighbor agreement as well in the zones. But I wanted to ask about, just clarify a separate topic, which is I understood that you're following the same procedure, which is a letter of interest and a request, then followed by a request for proposals. And this is for the building, the services that are provided in the building, separate from the way the site may be developed outside the building.
Yes.
But an organization could express interest in one or both of those things.
One or both, or a collaboration, right?
Okay.
So as an example, to throw out some names, not that they have expressed any interest, but as an example, the Aura collaborating with Access, Access being the developer and Aura being the service provider, coordinating body for the building, right? They would work together to ensure that there's cohesion and that, let's say it is transitional housing that's provided, how those services are going to be provided as well. So collaboration efforts are absolutely encouraged, but it doesn't have to be. It could be one organization that comes in and says, we want to do it all.
And then just to follow up, and then the regulation of this would be that the city would have a contract with whichever one or two organizations that would set out the city's expectations of those organizations, and then also clarify what it is that the city is providing. The city is providing the building, for example. The city is providing the site. The city is providing utilities, or whatever the city may be providing, and what sort of oversight the city would then provide.
Right, and I think it extends also the preliminary idea up to this point is that it's not just the deliverables within the contract that you could see a construction being built, right? But things like are the good neighbor agreements being adhered to?
Right, exactly.
So yeah,
That those would be in the contract as well. Okay, and then I noticed, I don't know if it's in here or if it's in another slide, but I noticed that you talked about like a two-step process there, that there's a contract, the city would manage that. That's as a city normally manages a contract with a staff person. I don't know which office in the city would do that. But then you envisioned a role not for another ad hoc committee, but for the Housing and Human Services Committee to play a advisory role as well, that perhaps the contract officer would report annually or something to the Housing and Human Services Committee on use of the property, on compliance with the contracts, and then the Housing and Human Services Committee could then report to the council in its annual report every December. Is that the kind of arrangement that you were
Yeah, that's
imagining?
absolutely a possibility. One of the things, and it is in a later slide, but I talk a little bit more about Housing Human Services Committee maybe being the landing place for reviewing all the documentation that then the coordinating body would have to say, is this really a good grievance and appeals policy? Is this really good? That kind of thing as well. So
Okay.
yes, and.
Okay. And that's what you were envisioning, Sabrina? That's great.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mary. And just to follow up on Councillor Kaplan's question, though, would you see, as we roll this out without those reporting requirements, would you see them being something like quarterly just to start? Just because we'd probably want to just have frequent and tangible measurements to just make sure that we're getting the deliverables that we're looking for across the community, correct?
Yeah, that hasn't been discussed. My personal
Just plant
opinion,
that seed
right,
then,
is
yeah.
that,
Okay,
yeah,
thank you.
that you have quarterly is fine. The first couple quarters probably will not show much because you need a baseline in order to identify change and improvement. So yes, and.
Okay, go. Oh, Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Yeah, see you.
So I have a quick question. I like the idea of the letter of intent going out first and then a request for a proposal. And as I read at the bottom of page 5, and you mentioned it, services are delivered directly on site. Some services, when I look at our regional partners and what the needs are, some services I don't think can be rendered on site. So do you mean this loosely, or what did you mean by that?
To a certain extent, which, for example, what would be a good example of a service that wouldn't be rendered on site?
Addiction recovery service, I know, for instance, they have brick and mortar where people who are in the middle of their addiction stay there.
Right, yeah, this might not be,
So
it
not
wouldn't be
that
a
type.
good, not that service from that, or from that kind of organization, but maybe that organization would be able to provide a space for counseling, right? That there are components
In the
of-
building.
Right, in the building.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because when you put it out there, that's kind of broad.
Yeah, right.
And so just to be more specific so that people don't anticipate
Mm-hmm.
that I'm here, so I want this. So in my opinion, I think that needs to be a little bit more clarity, a little
Yeah.
bit more defined.
So I think to clarify, the idea is that it's not just used as office space, it's used to provide direct service to
I
those in
understand
needs.
that, but I
So-
would still like a little clarity around that so that people know, what does that mean? What does that look like? And I also liked, if I can finish, thank you. I also had a question about the good neighbor agreement. I appreciate that, and I thought that some of our good neighbors might not always speak English, so maybe that could be in Spanish.
Sure.
I just wanted to, and the reason why I asked that original question was because I just want to make sure that we adhere to the first ad hoc committee and their time and effort and their 6 months that they put into 2200 also.
Yes, absolutely, thank you.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you. Just to Councilor Duquesne's point about, organizations that would be in there, it was decided that council would be reviewing those, that it wouldn't be up to the master leaseholder to
Oh, I know,
decide
we
which
were just using an
organizations.
example.
Yeah, just, there is that oversight built in.
Let's go ahead and keep moving.
You bet. No, I gotta go back here. Okay, so additional charges. Regarding oversight, one concept under discussion is embedding contract management and operational accountability into the contract processes. This is the concept that Councillor Kaplan was bringing up, but that the Housing Human Services be reviewing and advising on those partnerships and documentation. Regarding the Client Bill of Rights, Code of Conduct, Behavior Contract, similar things, like I said, the policies and procedures the committee has discussed up to this point, the approach of not drafting them all at this level, at the city level, instead allowing the coordinating agency or service provider to demonstrate established legally compliant policies that are demonstrably effective. Finally, the communication and engagement plan has been integrated really throughout the process. I mean, they're publicly noticed meetings. They're open to the public. There's space for public comment, and the minutes are all online, published online. In addition to that, we're conducting a lot of stakeholder conversations, like I said, continually. And then there is a community town hall planned at the site in April, a kind of open house forum with presentation of what we have drafted and requests for feedback from the community. Okay. Please.
Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, I just want to kind of issue spot something. So it says for contract RFP review and award and possible service provider partnership review, Housing and Human Services Advisory Committee. I think it's just important to note that ultimately that's a decision that should rest with council. Certainly their feedback is appreciated, but I think it should say HHSAC and council because they don't make those decisions.
Yes. You're referring to approval of the service providers.
Correct. No, for contract RFP review and award and possible
Yes.
service and the service provider partnership, but same with
Oh, I see
the
what you're saying.
overall
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
who's coming in that's interested in doing this. I mean, ultimately, it should be council deciding that, not a committee that doesn't have that authority.
Right, yes, you're right. Yeah, recommendations to council would come through.
Great.
Yeah, okay,
Thank you.
great. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the clarification.
Go ahead.
We're continuing to refine drafts, like I said, and look for feedback. A lot of work still needs to be done, and we really don't have a ton of time to do it. If the timeline holds, potential final recommendations, like I said, would come in April or early May, following the scheduled town hall and completion of the engagement aspect of this. At this stage, we're seeking council feedback on, I think, 3 key areas. The first is direction. Oh, thank you. Direction and feedback for the Good Neighbor Agreement framework. So you've provided some already, but we're also available absolutely for more written feedback. Guidance regarding the interim site use, and I'll speak more on that in a sec here. And then preferred timing and structure for the master plan LOI RFP process, so what that looks like. With respect to interim use, the current working direction is to maintain the site's existing function as a severe weather shelter while service provider evaluation and development planning continue. Given the uncertainty of the timeline for letter of intent RFP process, as well as the unpredictability of actually building on the site, most alternative interim uses would require an incredible amount of administrative coordination and infrastructure adjustments and neighborhood mitigation efforts and everything that would be really difficult to do as an interim basis for on the site for such a short period. Even relocation of the night lawn or pallet shelters, which has absolutely been discussed but is not being advanced as a preferred option at this time, would introduce additional complexity, impacts on surrounding residents, businesses, all kinds of things. This kind of shift would be really disruptive and on lots of fronts, and would prove, I think, inappropriate without proper planning and management from the outset. It should also be noted that the inclusion of that idea in the PowerPoint presentation without full context was an oversight. It should not be interpreted as the formal position of the committee. That's what we're recommending. That was something to kind of jog the idea, which had been flown for quite some time, that might be a possibility. So I wanted to bring that up. Mm-hmm.
So let me just make sure that I'm clear on this. So when you're reporting back to us about the pre-development relocation of the night lawn, you're reporting back that the committee doesn't believe that that's a viable interim use.
We've discussed it, and it has not been expressed that that is a viable use, right?
Okay, so you're reporting on where the conversations are with it.
Right.
And at this point, it's not coming forward as a recommendation, but
correct.
You're
right.
still in your process?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I'm also not suggesting that additional work be added to the committee's scope at this stage. I think a transition plan for the night lawn could warrant more careful consideration than we're really able to provide. Given the limited time remaining for the charge and hours available, I don't think we would have the capacity to fully vet ideas for that. So we are requesting the council provide direction regarding any other interim uses that have popped up that might seem feasible to council. Otherwise, we think that at this point that the severe weather shelter is the primary interim use for the site.
Councillor Kaplan?
And also a permanent use, because the severe weather shelter, it's not just an interim use, that will go on.
Yes.
Any provider that's going to be managing the building is going to be ensuring that there's at least severe weather service.
That's my understanding.
And then other services as well, and perhaps including shelter like this year. Okay.
So are there any additional questions? Because we do need to pay attention to our timing. Yes, Councillor Hanson.
Thank you. Noah, in the packet, the town hall was mentioned. You touched on it a little bit. Is that open to the public? Could you tell us a little bit about that?
You bet, and I'm going to pivot over here.
Yeah, so it's going to be on Wednesday, April 8th from 5 to 7. So we'll start pushing out information about that shortly, but it will be at 2200. So we'll have a quick guided self-tour through the facility if people are interested, and then we'll do a presentation and Q&A session. It will be April 8th.
April 8th, 5 to 7 p.m.
At 2200 Ashland Street.
Thank
It's
you.
in the address is that's the site.
Councillor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Noah. I just I want to go out on a limb here and just say that in the report, and under interim uses at the site, it does appear to be the committee's recommendation that we look at pallet shelters. And I think that's an amazing idea, and I would just like to hear a little bit about maybe what the committee talked about, how many, how can we get them? I can just tell you that development takes years. I mean, I love all these other ideas, but this is something that could literally be done in days, not years. And I'm just interested in hearing what you guys came up with when you did some research on this topic.
Yeah, pallet shelters has been a topic covered all over the place, including for this site. The language in there, the recommendation, that was a misprint. There's no recommendation for it at this time. It is definitely a possibility to be looked at and be looked at more if that's council's direction. But at this time, that is not what we're recommending.
And did you do any research at all to see potentially how many we could fit, how much they would be, how long it would take to get them on site?
No, but the city has already operated pallet shelter activities in the past, and so they would have all of that information pretty readily available.
Well, I was excited to see. I thought it was a great recommendation. Thanks.
And if I might add in, just on that, I'm also serving as a liaison. One of the things that was discussed was the fact that even an enterprise like that needs a significant amount of oversight and project management. And so without a partner that would be willing to do that and provide that level of functionality, it's not really a possibility anyway. So I think that that's part of it as well. We see a lot of constriction of services at the moment, not expansion of them. So there's a couple of different, I think, things that are in the way of even a temporary use of that in that space. We do need to move along. So we need to see if there's any specific direction. Quickly.
Yeah, I understand there's process and there's time, but we have our unhoused community out here living in, 1/16 of an inch nylon, and it's something that's worth putting time and effort into. Thanks.
Well, there has been some put into it. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, a quick comment, then an important question here. That being that we've already had one 2200 ad hoc committee, and it was explicitly stated that that would not be something that's at that. And I think that it's important that we honor what council is committed to already. As the comment, the question, I know you want direction, or it looked like you wanted direction on a good neighbor agreement. In your best judgment, would this be something that could be done at an open house where we could receive the community feedback on what should be in a good neighbor agreement, and then maybe refined by the committee itself from that information and feedback?
Yeah, absolutely. We've only done a couple passes at it, so yes, absolutely.
Great. Thanks, Noah. Appreciate it.
Okay. So are there any other feedback for the committee? My understanding is that you all are coming now because you're about to go out to the public with some general recommendations. If there's anything that council is really not interested in, it would be important to give that feedback now before there's a bigger public conversation about it. So it seems, Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you, Mayor. I would just like to kind of underscore the fact that this is the second ad hoc committee, so working in concert with the first ad hoc committee so that we can streamline things and have a productive open house April 8th. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving on now to public forum. We have 11 people who've signed up, so each person will have a minute and a half. You'll have, the way that this works is you'll come up to the way that this works. The way that this works is that you'll come up to the microphone. You have a visual cue next to you that gives you a green light while you still have time. Alyssa, let's have the buzzer and the light switch at 10 seconds. Is that right? We can leave it at 20. They're only going to have 90 seconds. Right, so, okay, so at 20 seconds, when you have 20 seconds left, it will go to yellow. You'll see, and you'll hear a little buzzer. You still have 20 seconds at that point to finish up your thoughts. Please, when it turns to red, please finish up the sentence that you're on so we can move on to hear the next person. If you need to have a microphone brought to you because of mobility issues, please just raise your hand when I call your name. Otherwise, the next couple people can line up behind the person at the podium. As a quick reminder, the council is not able to have a back and forth conversation during public forum. We can only hear what you've come to tell us. And please make sure you direct your conversation to the council. And as a reminder to everyone in the audience, we don't make any noise, we don't clap or any of that sort of thing. However, if you do agree with the person at the microphone, this will signal the council that you're in agreement with what's being said. And as a last reminder, there are no appropriate hand signals if you disagree. Okay? We are here to find out what the community is thinking, and we want to hear from you, so let's go ahead and get started. We'll start with Debbie Nicewander, and behind her will be Maury D., Jane Reese, and Joetta Klein.
So hello, my name is Debbie Nicewander, and well, I came to speak tonight about expulsion data, but I'm a little flustered, so I'm just going to vent. I'm on the 2200 ad hoc committee, and I've been having health problems and haven't been able to attend the last two meetings, which is difficult because the 2200 means a lot to me. And I just found out about tonight's presentation yesterday. Nobody cared or thought to email. I don't get email. I have to go to the library. I don't have a computer. So I'm just not really set up like most people are. But I didn't get any advance notification, and I'm really disappointed about that. So I wanted to just say that. And also, I struggled really, really hard to get those 13 pallet houses on the 2200 last ad hoc committee, and 10 of them we gave to Medford, so we no longer have them. Anyway. Enough's enough. Have a good night.
Thank you. And please state your name and the city in which you reside at the beginning of your testimony. Go ahead.
Maury D. Ashland. Oregon has a long, putrid history of suppression, intimidation, and violence towards people that are queer or not white. As recent as 1995, 2 lesbian activists were kidnapped and executed. In 2017, Anne Frank's oven was written on the electrical box by the railroad park. Ashland was a sundown city to keep her streets white, and people of color are still being called the N-word in this town. Japanese Americans were put in intern camps right east of here. Hispanics were deported massively in the Eisenhower era, and to the day, Dead Indian Memorial is the city's idea of an indigenous memorial. And this is just a few things, and this is our concern. Some of us have met with the mayor, and we find this urgent. We do not want to wait, as she suggested, to see what the state and the feds will do and set precedents by having laws in place. Masked ICE agents exist to invoke fear and hopelessness throughout the city and society. We needed to enact a strong policy to ensure that masked Jim Crow secret police are illegal in our town. We would like your commitment and priority in enacting a no-secret police that reflects House Bill 4138 as part of city ordinance. All law enforcement activities must not be pursued by masked, unidentifiable agents and operated without a warrant. We need this for March 2nd. We need this on the agenda.
The next person is Jane Reese, followed by Joetta Klein, Monty Walters, and Eden Herr.
My name is Jane Reese. I'm a 40-year resident of Ashland, and I have some concerns about when ICE comes to our town, and I'd like to be prepared. I don't want to be reactive. I want to be proactive. I'd like to know what our rights are as citizens, what we can expect from the police department, our community, and I don't want to be fearful. And so in order to not be fearful, I need to know what to expect. I'm hoping we can have it on the agenda, and you can be clear with us about what you've looked into, what we need to have happen. I guess that's about it. I'm sure there's going to be more said on it that I'll agree with, but thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Council. Thank you for hearing us. My name is Joetta Klein, and I live in Ashland. And I wrote something out because it's the first time I've spoken at a council meeting. I'm much more comfortable on the streets than I am in the office in the center here. So I too am a member. I'm a member of the Langston Hughes Affinity Group, and I wish to speak to the issue of Ashland City Council creating a resolution that would call upon the United States Congress and the Oregon Legislature to enact legislation prohibiting law enforcement from concealing their identities. In other words, from wearing masks and not having any kind of identification on them. I have watched in horror the images from around our country as federal agents commit crimes such as using excessive force, assaulting bystanders, civil rights violations, and other criminal acts not related to their work enforcing federal laws, including murdering U.S. citizens. And quite frankly, I see no reason, given their past behavior, that the same crimes might not occur right here on our streets against any of us, including each person in this room. I find the very real prospect of federal agents masked and highly armed, not only with live deadly weapons, but chemical weapons on our streets and in our plaza, absolutely terrifying. And I would wish that you would pass an ordinance, that you would affirm what the legislature is doing, no more unidentified people. Thank you.
Thank you. We have Monty Walters and Eden Herr, followed by Doug Houston and John Maurer.
Recently, the Ashland News printed an article by Mayor Graham, and I want to say about secret policing. And I appreciate your efforts in this regard, particularly networking with other mayors. However, I'll note that we've been pressing for the council to address this issue since November, and we're still waiting to be on the agenda. We're asking you to tackle this issue with us, not solve it for us. Survivors of authoritarian regimes have stressed one key rule: do not obey in advance. You must make tyrants take power over you. Recently in our state, armed vigilantes have kidnapped Oregon residents. And I'm calling them vigilantes because they generally don't identify themselves, so you don't know if they're ICE. When we met with the mayor, she recommended that we ought to pursue an ordinance, not just a resolution about this issue, but it seems she may be backing away from this position, as though it's futile to forbid a vigilante. That sure sounds like obeying in advance. I've recently identified two federal judges who refute the supremacy clause. Federal Judge Kubaya in Portland and one in Northern California. There is grounds for pushing back against the federal government. We can't wait for the state to take action for us. We have to act locally ourselves.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Eden Luz. It's not Eden Herr, but I do go by that pronoun. I am a resident of Ashland for a decade and of the Valley for over 2 decades, and I'm here tonight to say what many people have already said. It needs to be on the agenda how we're dealing with ICE, and it needs to be either an ordinance or a resolution to not allow masking of any officer, not only because that anonymity allows more brutality to breed within an untrained population of people who are employed basically to be violent against citizens in the United States. But also because there are people who are masking themselves and kidnapping people. And that's been happening across the country, and I hear it's happening in Oregon as well. And that's a real threat. So it's the job of our city and of our community to stand up against this. And given that there's legislation now in the works in our state, that we also have an opportunity to stand with our state. So that's it. Thank you.
Doug Houston, followed by John Maurer, Suzanne Haveman, and Paul Mozina.
Hi, my name is Doug Houston. I'm a resident of Ashland, Oregon. Here today in support of this Ashland City Council passing a resolution that would support the state constitutional amendment and our state statutes prohibiting all law enforcement officers from wearing a mask or face covering. The irony is not lost on me that I'm wearing one now. And requiring visible identification. This supports the principle that government exists to protect and serve its people. Conversely, I'd like the city to consider creating an ordinance for much the same purpose. I don't really imagine Ashland police officers confronting federal officers directly, but there's some off chance that video footage could capture behavior prohibited by the ordinance and a district attorney could pursue charges. This would make me especially proud to be a citizen of Ashland. In addition to supporting the brave people of Minneapolis and St. Paul and drawing a bright line in the sand for DHS officers, I'd like to stop such behaviors in support of upstanding local law enforcement who now have to overcome generalized police mistrust fomented by the cruel and professional and illegal policing tactics used by Border Control and ICE agents. Thanks for your consideration.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Graham and Council. John Maurer, 50 years here in town. I want to give you a little update as to what the state of healthcare is. As you know, there's a coalition of concerned people here in town, good folks, meeting regularly to address the crisis that we're facing. The crisis is far bigger than the loss of our hospital. That's a big deal, to be sure, and that's what got us started, but we have a crisis that far exceeds that. We have an unsustainable model, as Asante has been good enough to share with us. We have had some roundtables that just opened up, and that's a great sign. They are paying attention. However, the news isn't good. It's unsustainable when you have a payer mix of Medicare and Medicaid patients that we do here in town as we do here in Southern Oregon. It's unsustainable. When you reach 20%, okay, of your payer mix being Medicare, or when only 20% is commercial insurance, you're doomed. And we're doomed here. We need to move forward. And I suggest that we do move forward. We can and will be, I've seen it before, we're capable of being a fully integrated healthcare delivery system here in Ashland. That is, every Ashland citizen could receive healthcare. It's going to be costly. It's going to make a bond issue look like child's play when dealing with water treatment, to be sure. We're putting it on notice. That's coming down the line. Stay tuned, but we're going to go beyond the hospital. Have to. Hospital itself can't sustain us. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council, for listening, for hearing us out. I am here in support of our Ashland Community Hospital. It is no small thing. It is part of our community. We cannot be without it. So I'm asking that you please support the continuation of our Ashland Community Hospital as a general hospital. As John Maurer has mentioned, it is now in the hands of Asante, which will not continue. We need to look at ownership by you, by others, but we must not let this hospital go. It is an integral part of our community. In my 33 years as a surgery manager, I repeatedly said that Ashland Community Hospital feels like is an extension of our community. So all the things we're here for, the choices we've made to live in Ashland is also given to you as a patient at Ashland Community Hospital. It is unique, and it's necessary to also support Rogue Regional Hospital. I'm asking you that the $4 million that will be coming down the line, please make sure you get on it to get it and earmark it for the hospital, because things are moving. Other people are looking at the hospital, and I want us to be on top of it and ready to move to keep this hospital. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Paul Mozina, followed by Mary McHughes.
Hi, Paul Mozina. I was struck by the hypocrisy of the mayor's statement in her State of the City address. Quote, "There is no hiding and hoping that what is happening elsewhere will not find its way to Ashland. The erosion of the rule of law will eventually land at our feet if we choose not to act." I'm sure you all remember amending the budget that was approved by the Citizens Budget Committee at your May 19, 2025 study session. Remember when Councilor Dale asked if a motion would be required to do that? To which the city manager responded, "We just need direction, since and that way we can bring it back as directed tonight with the adoption of the budget." Was the city manager aware of the Oregon Revised Statute, which requires the public hearing to be on the budget as approved by the CBC? Was she aware that the Oregon Department of Revenue's local budgeting manual explicitly dictates that any changes to the budget can only be made after the budget hearing? Did she assume that the notorious 10% rule, which only applies to changes made after the budget hearing, provided the cover she needed to slip the amendments into the budget before the hearing? Did she forget about the Ashland's Charter's requirement that a public motion and vote are required for any action taken by the council to be legally binding? The city manager gave the council bad direction, which was backed up by the city attorney, and you willingly went along with it. You collectively violated the Oregon Revised Statutes and the Ashland Charter, and the mayor is worried that, quote, "the erosion of the rule of law will land at our feet." It's already here. Thank you.
Thank you. Mary McHughes?
I'm going to put my hat on because I want to start with everyone in this room wears multiple hats, right? At one time or another, you've been in different jobs. So today I am speaking as someone who worked for HRSA in hospitals and clinics, managing a 340B drug program that provided these hospitals and clinics to stretch valuable resources. And these federal regulations are complicated. And why am I talking about this? Because I think we have an opportunity here. But I want a little more background. I have a minute. I worked with the CFO at a district hospital in Mendocino County to return overpayment to Safeway, that contract pharmacy they had. And we did battle with them. And Safeway brought the big guns. And it was just the CFO and myself being good cop, bad cop. Actually, I was the bad cop. But what's the difference here is Ashland is a community rich in talent. And how do we motivate this talent to care about our little hospital on Maple Street? I think by coming up with out-of-the-box opportunities, and I have two I want to offer. One is adding assisted living, if they, to this Oregon satellite hospital they have in mind. And yes, this requires navigating some regulatory bodies. I have looked this up on the OAR. Another opportunity is to consider implementing hospice services in the vacated inpatient rooms and keep the birthing center. And so here we have labor to come into the world, labor going out. So this little hospital has served this community well and needs to be taken care of. Thank you.
Thank you. Before we move on, I just want to follow up and about the fact that Asante has identified, they've put a number of roundtables out into the public. They are all filled at this point, and so I have requested to them that they create some additional capacity so that everyone who wants to have a conversation with them can get into one of these conversations. So hopefully they're working on that, and hopefully we'll see some new ones come into that schedule that will have some space available for them. Okay, we move on now to resolutions, and thank you all for coming to speak with us tonight at Public Forum. Sabrina?
So tonight, We have Tom McBartlett here, excuse me, and consultants to talk about our electric rate adoption. So we are following up from our December special meeting. So before you tonight as a resolution to adopt those rates. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Tom.
Good evening, councilors. Good evening, Mayor and councilors. Thanks for your time tonight. This is follow-up from our study session in December, where we kind of did a deep dive on these rates. I've got just a few slides to go through, and I think our consultant, Mike Johnson, is online with us as well if we have any follow-up questions. So we're here to consider Resolution 2026-02 that will repeal 2021-08 and set electric rates for 3 years. So this impact chart shows what that does to our average residential customer, because residential is our largest customer base. Over the 3-year period, it's a little, starts just under $3, and then by the third year, it'd be a $3.23 increase on their average monthly bill. This one I included because it was a little small to see in the packet, so I put it up here so we can just see where that kind of bases us next to our nearest competitor, which would be Talent, and shows how we've really done well with our BPA contract and the way we've invested in our system to keep us well below their rates. This first year of with comparison, we'd be about 40% less than our neighboring electric utility. And I did include the electric users tax in there just for informational purposes, even though that doesn't really impact the utility and the utility's health. I've got a potential motion slide here for you, and then the next slide is just questions. So I'll leave that motion up.
Great, thank you. And we've had multiple conversations about this up to this point. So questions for staff, Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks, Tom, for coming. I was just hoping that you could, in the simplest terms for the community, explain, one, why we need to increase rates, right, to be able to cover costs. What considerations go into that with regard to deferred maintenance, upcoming improvements to transmission line service, and also maybe clarify a bit, because folks look and say, hey, there's $8 million in reserve. Why can't you just use that, draw that down to smooth out rates over a period of time? If you could really, in the simplest of terms, for folks to kind of understand the thinking behind this, so that they can understand the position that we will be coming from as well.
Okay, I'll start with the driver's piece of it. In this current rate period with Bonneville, that Bonneville set rates for 3 years, and in the setting of that, our transmission costs went up by 18%. And then on top of that, our collective bargaining agreements also have 3 years worth of wage increases. We don't have a ton of deferred maintenance, so to speak, but if you recall, the electric master plan did have some recommendations for some pretty large capital investments to meet future growth needs. And so we need to start at least spending the money on the engineering of that. And then once we get that piece done, look at whether we want to pay for those improvements via rates or debt financing, which leads to the having capital sitting there. There's two big reasons. One is an emergency, and I can give just a somewhat recent example of how fast a burn rate is on a big storm. When we sent our crews to help in Springfield, we sent 4 guys for 10 days. Is all we billed Springfield for. We didn't try to make any money on them. Just for the hours for the men and the equipment was just under $200,000. So that's $20,000 a day, and that's not a single piece of material, a meal, or a motel to go along with it. I don't know how many crews Springfield had, but I know ours was probably one of the cheapest, because a bunch of the crews they got were contract crews. Those guys are going to make 30 or 40% or they're not coming. So we were probably one of their lowest cost helpers, and they were there for weeks. So that's why big reserves are needed. Yeah, FEMA might get that back to you. That can take years to file for those FEMA claims. So having those reserves is important for a catastrophic event. It's also important for if we do decide to debt finance a big capital project, to show healthy finances to get that financing.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you for that. I think it's important context, and I think that, I'll kind of go backwards here a little bit. The FEMA point is well stated. We're seeing right now, you've got the floods that happened in North Carolina, and they're still struggling to get those funding. A lot of that is all held up under national, the same organization runs ICE, Border Patrol, all that, right? So you can imagine there's some struggles there. I think it's also important to understand the context with Springfield is that, you have one major event, whether it's a wildfire or a severe winter storm, which I know this year it feels like it's not going to happen, and that's what an odd concept, but we can look at last year where we did get hit pretty hard, and we got lucky. We could burn through that 8 million reserve in no time, trying to get caught up
Faster than any of us want to imagine.
Exactly, and that's you talk in the past about things that keep you up at night. It's those kind of situations, and I appreciate also you highlighting that this isn't just about what BPA is charging us. There is costs associated with, we're very fortunate, and I think that unions are very important. Well, they negotiate and they get a certain wage, and that needs to be factored in as well. So thank you for that clarifier.
Any other questions? Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, thanks, Tom. I was going to ask the same question as Councilor Bloom, but as I recall, and I appreciate the fact that we have limited deferred maintenance and you and the crews, but I think we discussed back in December that part of it too is just kind of the larger picture of we're closer to 60% of the kind of, we'll call it useful life, as opposed to we want to be around 50%. So part of this is actually planning for, kind of like Scott does in Public Works, relative to, spending a little money on streets before you have to spend a lot of money on the streets, correct? So
Correct.
there's that.
And we do that kind of on an ongoing basis, but, we are depreciated out a little more than we probably should be.
Sure. If I may, just real quick, just to point out, I just want to this is just a brief comment. Thanks for putting the electric users tax on that, and thanks for calling out this is just for rates. I don't think it's lost on this council, certainly not lost on me, that is just a necessary incorporation into that, and that this council, people can look on the look ahead and see that we will be having at least 2 discussions with our budget committee and working on our financials later on in the spring. So that is a separate conversation that I think this council is going to take up. But right now, we're actually looking at the rates and what we have to do within the fund relative to our infrastructure and providing services and meeting our financial minimum balance policies too, correct?
Yeah, the financial health of the utility is what we're looking at.
Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Thanks, Tom. And I appreciate the comparison that you put up there about Ashland's costs, Ashland's rates compared to Pacific Power's rates, including the electric tax. One of the things that it shows for Pacific Power is how Pacific Power recovers costs for its low-income assistance program. And my understanding of it is that they charge a total of $3.33 per account per month for that. There's 2 charges. One is $2.67, and the other one is something else, I think, $2.64 and $2.69. So it's a total of $3.33 for low-income assistance recovery. That's not what they pay. That's what each customer pays in order to build up the funds to be able to provide low-income assistance. We do the same thing, and there was a question, I think, in one of the previous recent council meetings about how we fund that. We fund it from Sabrina. I think you weren't here. I think Sabrina told us that comes out from ratepayers, but we don't. That doesn't show up in our bill. I'm wondering if you could tell us. Do you know how much that would be per 12,500 accounts? Because I know that we have $400,000 that we've set aside for low-income assistance. It covers electricity, water, and sewer. Right. Do you know what the electric portion of that is?
No, I mean, not off the top of my head. I mean, we could probably do the math on it. I would think that, if we wanted to start itemizing things out on the bill, I think conservation would actually be a larger piece of that. But, what are we looking at? Like an $18 million budget, 400,000 is,
So my question is about the low-income assistance. It looks to me, just that if I do the math, $400,000 divided by 12,500 accounts, that's $2.67 per month. And again, that's all three services. So I'm wondering if we just, I'm actually wanting to call attention to that, because we have been getting quarterly reports about the usage of our low-income assistance, utility assistance, and this council has been very concerned to make sure that we're being generous, particularly as households are facing more challenges covering their utilities and their cost of living, that we have enough money there. I just want to make sure that we are cognizant of the fact that we're actually providing less. We're charging our customers less to recover the low-income assistance monies than Pacific Power is doing. So if we come to a situation where we need to increase that money because we've got a lot of people that are hitting that $400 annual ceiling, we have some scope to be able to do that and still be, quite not as generous as Pacific Power is doing. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I would say it's kind of tough to make a full-on apples-to-apples comparison just because of the customer base that Pacific Power draws from compared to the size of our customer base. So it would, to really do a comparison, you'd have to look at how many people are taking low-income assistance through Energy Trust or Pacific Power's programs versus ours, and look at the percentages to see really where the equilibrium would be.
That's a fair point. But anyway, I appreciate your thinking about this, and as we get those quarterly reports, I'll be really watching it and making sure that we're providing enough assistance to our low-income households as we need to. Thank you.
So we have one person who has signed up to speak with us tonight about this, Paul Mozina. You'll have 3 minutes. Yes, I'll get to you.
Thank you. My name is Paul Mozina. In reviewing the resolution, why is there no mention under fiscal impacts of the fact that the increases to the base rate and usage rate, when multiplied by the 25% electric users tax, will result in an additional $500,000 of revenue going to the general fund annually? The city manager explained this to you at your August 4th, 2025 study session, but she seemed to have forgotten all about this at the December 17th study session when Councillor Duquesne asked, quote, if this is to pass, this utility hike, would it go toward paying the salary that was just put in place for our staff? Is that correct? Kata. So all the revenue that the electric utility generates goes towards the electric utilities. So in part, it would pay for the linemen and the electric staff. Duquesne. Because I do recall, if I'm right, that sometime in August it was mentioned that having the utility, this electric rate go up, it would go towards the raise that our staff just recently received. Kata. So I think you're recalling some of the numbers that ensuring that we keep rates at a rate that ensures that we can employ the appropriate staff was part of the council's communication back in August when the IBW contract came through. Duquesne did not press the point. Kata did not tell the whole truth when she answered. Yes, all the revenue from the base rate and usage charges goes to the electric fund, which does support the salaries of the people who work in the electric department. What Kala failed to mention was that the revenue from the 25% electric users tax goes to the general fund, which does pay the salaries of city employees in the administration, including Sabrina Callas. None of the other councilors helped Duquesne clarify her question or point out the omission in Kala's answer. Because of the electric users tax, the increases to the base rate and usage rate will contribute to funding the salaries of city employees. Why can't you just tell the whole truth to the people when implementing increases like this? Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hanson?
Thanks, Mayor. Thank you, Tom. I appreciate you coming here with all of this. Could you go back to that comparison slide and break down just kind of what our overall percentage of increase will be if we approve this for next year?
Yeah, so it's for residential, we're speaking of here, it's 3.9% a year, or 3.83. I think when I built this spreadsheet where it rounds, it comes out to 3.9.
3.9.
So over the 3 years, that 79.88 in the first year, by the third year would be 86.22. So it's $9.33 on average residential over the 3 years. And that includes the base fee and the usage fees.
Great, thank you. I'm curious, do you know what Pacific Power has done recently in the last couple of years?
So I pulled up this same chart from the last time we did rates that went into effect fiscal year 22, July 1 of 2021. And since then, it's increased over 50% to what you see on here.
Right, yeah, I Googled it and came up with something similar. In 23, they raised their rates 21%. In 24, it was 13%. And in 25, it was 10%.
And they have a rate case in front of the PUC currently.
So we know that with the scarcity of new electricity coming online and the uptick in data centers, that in fact the governor's having a forum on energy forum on where we're going to get our electricity. I just wanted to give a quick glow to, if that's okay, to the city. Like we've contracted, we have a runway for 3 years. We know what our rates are going to be. Even after adding our 25% electric tax, we still have a 28% less charge or fee total package than Pacific Power. We have more uptime because we have less power outages, and we know where our electricity comes from. We're not buying coal from Idaho. You know, we're getting it straight from the Columbia River dams. So I just wanted to say that I think this is a great deal for the cities of Ashland, and as an economic development driver, I think that electricity and electric dependency and us being able to sell this to the business community is going to be an asset for us. So I'm 100% in favor of all this. And then we have an electrical engineering study that we're going to look at, so we can look at opportunities to future-proof our community from more natural disasters and keeping more of our solar and our local resources within our grid. I just think we're going the right direction, and for what it's worth, I approve wholeheartedly of this plan, and I thank you for your hard work on it. I think we're getting a great deal.
Thank you.
Are there any additional questions? I heard you. The floor is, Councilor Duquesne.
Thank you for your presentation and your work on your comparison with the cost. However, we live in Ashland, and when I look at the compound of all of the costs to live in Ashland, I don't understand what the sense of urgency is for this. And so my question is I believe that BPA came to council in November and told us that we did not have to go to a second tier and that we've had no growth and our load is fine. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And I just don't see what the sense of urgency is for this. I appreciate your presentation, and I did read in the packet that it mentioned it would start at a $3 for the average household. Well, when I look at this progressive cost compounded what's already out there, I believe that it will be a greater cost than the average household of $3. So I just wanted to clarify that in November, BPA did come and make that statement, and I do appreciate your time, Thomas. Thank you.
Just to add one point, one of the drivers for this is the BPA rate increase that went into effect October 1st of last year of 18% on our transmission costs. I mean, everything you said is correct, but there is that rate increase that we are under right now for the next 3 years.
And they said that in October, and then they came here in November and presented to council.
The presentation in November was related to the next contract that doesn't start until October 1st of 2028. That's what what that was focused on, was that next provider of choice contract.
Thank you. However, I don't see the population growing exponentially in between now and then, so thank you.
Are there any further questions? Floor is open for a motion. Councilor Kaplan?
Thanks, Mayor. I move approval of Resolution 2026-02 titled "A Resolution Revising Rates for Electric Service Pursuant to Ashland Municipal Code 14.16.030 and repealing Resolution 2021-08.
Second.
Discussion? Councillor Kaplan?
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. Tom, thanks for laying this all out. Thanks for giving us the background on it with the consultant a couple of months ago now. The fact that we're repealing Resolution 2021-08, that means we haven't actually increased our electric rates for 5 years. I don't know anything else that hasn't gone up 1 penny in 5 years. Frankly, I'm thankful. I feel proud the way you've run the electric department. I feel proud that we've been able to keep rates down to that degree for so long when everything else is going up all around us. We heard 50% for Pacific Power. Vista has gone up likewise for natural gas, 50%. Everything's going up. And we've kept it we've not had a single rate increase for 5 years. I think it's time to raise it. You've laid out why we need to do it in order to meet our costs going forward and make sure that we're investing appropriately to continue to have a reliable and resilient electric system. So I'm very pleased to support this motion to increase our rate with a very modest 3.8% increase.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I'm supporting this. I mean, it's difficult. It's hard. I rent an old apartment, and my electric costs are incredibly high because of the amount of, it's just not well insulated, right? So I understand people's concerns, and I think that we really need to, as a body, focus efforts on how we increase the discount program and subsidies. And I think that there are savings within the electric fund and conservation that could be diverted for that purpose to help offset this impact. But you laid it out. I mean, it's not just the 2%, right? It's not just about, not deferred maintenance, but lifetime costs and transmission lines, all of that. But I think, let's put a scenario here to folks is that we wait, we don't do anything, we run our electric utility into the ground. We already know that Pacific Power charges more. When they come in and buy us out, we might get a nice little one-time capital bump, but how are they going to recoup that investment from buying our electric? They're gonna pass it on to us. I would rather protect this and preserve this for future generations so that they're not facing the consequences of our short-sightedness. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Councillor Duquesne?
Before the vote goes out, Thomas, I'd like to thank you for holding it down for the people for 5 years, because that is an accomplishment. So I just wanted to put that out there and thank you for that. However, I just do not see a sense of urgency when I look at a very precarious world that we all live in right now, with the additional costs that we've already incurred since June. So within the last 9 months, with budget passes and raises and additional costs to our utilities, I will not be supporting this. Thank you.
Councillor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, I appreciate all the councilors' comments, and specifically just want to say I absolutely support what Councilor Kaplan had said. I won't repeat that, but I agree wholeheartedly. I would also say that I think as mentioned earlier, relative to our financial policies and taking a look at that one of the things that I think we've talked about internally at the city is saying how do we put a little bit more clarity relative to separating out capital and so forth, so people can look at a fund and see what we're trying to do by saving, so that we don't have to go out and incur debt to be able to do something. And I think that can get lost sometimes. So I just want to say that I appreciate your help in doing that. It'll tell a better story when people are looking at our financials and what we're trying to do in all of our enterprise funds. And of all the things that we're worried about, and to Councillor Bloom and others' comments about being proud of this utility, there's a whole bunch of things that keep you up at night, a whole bunch of things. The one thing that doesn't keep you up at night, because we don't have, are private shareholders looking for a return. Okay? So thank you again. Appreciate it.
I would just add that the good work that you and your team are doing is part of our bigger resilience work. With all of the wildfire work that you're doing to protect our system and to protect us against ignitions. And this matters, and we cannot depend on FEMA. We know that with so many changes happening at the federal level, that if we do have a major disaster, it's no longer a situation where it simply may take them a long time to come. They may simply never show up. So I think it's thoughtful and important and smart to make sure that we have the resources that we need to take care of ourselves in an emergency. If there is no further discussion, roll call please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Duquesne,
No.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. So we are to the public hearing section. We have to have our public hearings done within the next 23 minutes. And so that means that we need to prioritize. Alyssa, have people come to speak to us on any of these particular the ordinances that we are looking at in first reading?
Just for Clay Street.
Just for Clay Street. Sabrina, is there anything else on this list that is more timely than Clay Street?
I'd like to get to the utility billing ordinance if we could after Clay Street. Other than that, no.
Okay. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, a quick question, Mayor, and just a proposal to put out there. I think that it would be incumbent on us and fitting our responsibility as counselors that whatever we are not able to get through tonight, I would request that we call a special meeting next week so that we can get through this. Otherwise, it could be 6 months before we finish all these.
We can take that up. We can take that up when we see where we get to today. Let's move on to the Clay Street, the consideration of the proposed sale of 380 Clay Street. Sabrina?
So we'll go ahead and have Jordan come up here tonight. So we are proposing to hold the public hearing to dispose of the property 380 Clay Street. So if you recall, we've spoken about this before. We do not have a purpose for this property, and the city would like to move forward with disposal so that we no longer have to maintain it, with a recommendation potentially that those proceeds go towards our capital fund for facilities purposes. And with that, I'll hand it over to Jordan.
Great. Thank you, and hello, City Council. This is a topic that you all visited last December 2nd, to discuss the surplusing of Clay Street property. We are here before you tonight for a public hearing on deciding if we should sell the property through the specific process as defined by Oregon statute. As a reminder, we're following the Oregon statute process because we don't have our own local process adopted. At least not yet, although I believe the one before you all at a future hearing will be very similar. So the hearing tonight is a chance for you all to hear the details about the property as well as to hear some public comment before making the determination if you would like the city to move forward with sale of the property. As a reminder for you to think about while I present some of the information, types of choices that you all can make tonight besides if you'd like to sell the property or not sell the property is if you'd like to place restrictions, specific processes to go about selling the property, or specific things around what you would like to do with the sales of proceeds. That is all part of the potential discussion tonight. So the property before you all, and I apologize, I was chatting in the lobby and I didn't pull the report right up in front of me, but it is the property and parcel at 380 Clay Street. Currently on that property, there is a single-family residential that has been determined to be derelict and likely eligible for full removal, as well as a very large and very old Fremont cottonwood tree. This property is zoned R2, meaning that it is eligible for anything that's allowed in R2, but that primarily is residential. The recent state changes would also allow childcare in that zone if the city in the future adopts that state language updates. Other things pertinent, the city did appraise the property in this past year, and it was appraised at $250,000. And if interested, I am happy to share information around the history of the parcel and the tree itself, if the council so would like.
Nope, I think we're good. Councilor Kaplan?
Yes. Jordan, could you give us a little bit more history on the tree itself? Like the packet says that it was twice determined ineligible for removal. So what is the process for determining it eligible or ineligible for removal? Who made that determination? What it was? Tell us more about that.
Yes. So back in 2009, In partnership with the Housing Authority of Jackson County, the city submitted a subdivision application to the city of Ashland for that parcel, which is part of a much larger parcel and several parcels for the development of affordable housing subdivision in that area. In that 2009 application, that Fremont cottonwood tree specifically was not marked for removal, it was marked to be kept. And so because the city accepted that application for subdivision, it was under the condition that that tree is kept. And so the tree has to go through with the highest level of the tree removal permit to be removed, because the way it was accepted into the city originally was earmarked as a tree that would be preserved. And so what does that mean to be have to go through the tree removal permit process? Just to give you guys a step back, residential properties are able to remove single trees through a pretty expedited, easy process. But when we require that a tree goes through our tree removal permit process, it has to meet certain thresholds to allow to be removed. One way is it could be determined to be hazardous, which it needs a certified arborist report to show that it is a danger to people or property. Or the other two is to show that it is inhibiting development in that area. And then there has to be proof shown that it is inhibiting it and can't be prevented and still keep the tree as is. So in 2015, 2016, that part of the parcel had not been developed yet. And so the city manager at the time did apply for a tree removal permit of that Fremont cottonwood. And it was determined then, particularly by the Planning Commission, that it did not meet the level of hazardous tree definition or of preventing development. So the city and the Housing Authority at that time was proposing a 20-unit affordable housing apartment complex. Because the tree was not able to be removed, they ended up making the parcels smaller, splitting it up, and 15 to 17 units of affordable housing were built on the property that was eventually sold to the Housing Authority. And so those are the two planning actions that I know of that were related to the Fremont cottonwood in 2009, 2015, 16. And I do believe the property has been fenced since we split that parcel and sold the back half towards the Housing Authority.
And do we have, is there an assessment of whether it's currently considered hazardous?
We did have a city arborist look at it, do a drive-by, and it looks very healthy in its current state.
Yeah, I rode by there the other day and it's starting to bud.
Yeah, I mean, it looks beautiful. Likely would want to do some trimming just to maintain health, but the tree itself looks to be in great shape.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Yes, Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, just hoping to get clarification. And in terms of the development, though, if somebody were to buy this property and want to develop 20, let's say 20 units, and it was determined by the Planning Commission that they would not be able to do so with the tree, they then would be allowed to remove the tree. Is that correct?
They would have to go through the tree removal permit process. So I always put those in the wrong order. And so part of that process is showing the development is not possible without the removal.
I'm just saying hypothetically, if they were able to show that, then the Planning Commission would be the one to approve the removal of the tree at that point?
At that point, it could be determined, it'd be a type 1 permit as first review that can be appealed to the Planning Commission.
Okay, and if the Planning Commission determined that, no, you can't remove the tree, could that be appealed to the council?
So it depends on how it's filed. And so this is where Brandon gave me very clear directions before this meeting, and I'm going to hopefully make him proud and parroting it back. So if it is filed as simply a tree removal permit, that can be done at the staff level. It gets, appealed to the Planning Commission. Sure. If it's a part of a development, which in that case, if you need to move the case as part of a development, it would instead first go to Planning Commission for review and decision, and then appealable to City Council.
Got it.
So if it's going to be developed as a single-family home, that would have to be over the counter, appealable to Planning Commission. If it's going to be a multi-unit housing development, that will likely go through a Type 2 Planning Commission process.
So similar to a lot of the other planning processes where it could be appealed.
Correct.
Great, thank you.
I know there are additional questions, but we need to get the public hearing aspect of this complete by 8 o'clock, so I'm going to move on to inviting people who've signed up to come up and speak with us this evening. Each person will have 3 minutes following the same instructions that were given earlier for public forum. The first speaker is Samara Burnett, followed by CeCe Brown, Brian Hawley, and Alan Sandler. Go ahead. Please state your name and the city in which you reside to start your testimony.
I'm Samara Burnett, and I live in Ashland. Hello, councilors and mayor. I'm here to talk about the Clay Street property and the magnificent tree that we call the Tree of Hope. I know the council wants to be rid of this property and the tree in a quick and simple manner. I know you also want a win for our community of bringing in some money and creating more housing. However, I don't think that the sale you have in mind will end up being so simple. And I think it would make a lot of people really unhappy. As you know, the property is zoned R2, and any owner will have to require a permit to remove the tree. There'll be a sign on the property and an invitation for public comment. And I believe there'll be an outpouring of public protest about this. There's a long history of activism in Ashland to protect this very tree. The city has twice applied for permits to remove the tree, and it has twice been denied. The criteria to justify removal has not been met. Inspectors have certified that the tree is healthy and safe. A tree core sample done by a professional showed that this tree is at least 250 years old. It has lived here long before white settlers have arrived in this valley, and it could live here another 200 years. Surely you must recognize that the presence of this tree is significant and valuable to our community. Again, I know you want the win of creating more housing and acquiring money for the city. And on paper, your math does look good. However, in terms of public opinion, it's a different equation. It's a small property, it's a relatively small amount of money, and it's a very big and very loved tree. There is a compromise that could be a win for everybody, though. The city could divide the lot and sell the portion that the house is on to a developer and return that money to the city. The part that the tree is on could be retained as a park, a permanent home for this oldest living member of our community. Right now, the people of Ashland are already upset at government leaders. We're in the midst of a war. We're in the midst of ICE raids, of the Epstein files. We are angry that our leaders are ruled by money and power and are trampling on the vulnerable. We are desperately in need of acts of justice and respect. Please show us that. Show us you respect the values of Ashland, keep the property and make it a park.
Thank you.
You'll
Thank
be
you,
remembered
ma'am.
for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
CC Brown?
Can Brian go first?
No.
Because my remarks are determined by what he says.
Go ahead, Brian. Go ahead.
Brian Hawley, Ashland, Oregon. I'm speaking to Save the Tree of Hope. The city's land acknowledgement, which honors Indigenous peoples, doesn't seem to mesh with our culture's attitude about trees. I learned from Grandma Aggie, Takelma Elder Agnes Baker Pilgrim, that the Takelma word for tree translates into English as one-legged, just like us, two-legged, and our animal friends who are four-legged. So the question is raised as to whether we have reverence for or feel connected with any part of nature like Indigenous peoples do. Is anything sacred? Is any tree special? At your December 2nd meeting, I did not hear one word about the 20 years of community efforts to save the tree. So on December 16th, I sent you my previous letter to council from April 15th, 2021 to that council, as well as my current remarks. I want to thank Councilor Kaplan for responding to me and meeting with me. I posted those same emails on Nextdoor, and they both received over 2,000 views and my recent posting about making the tree a heritage tree has already received over 2,600 views. I think a reasonable person would assume by these figures that many Ashlanders treasure this tree and are very interested in what happens to it. I served on the tree commission when the development proposal that Brandon Goldman told you about in December came through with 117 units. We had heard reports of wetlands being on the property, and it turned out that the state DEQ research verified that, and that fact stopped that proposal. Only feet from the tree, where there is water that has been called a well, which may look like and may have served as a well, is instead just one above ground expression of the water that flows downhill through the whole property. If you fill the well, which we believe is why the tree has survived for so long, you will kill the tree. At the December meeting, a counselor expressed surprise that the tree hadn't keeled over and killed somebody, and said that the tree is a hazard. These statements were unfortunate and not supported by the facts. The tree has survived windstorms, snowstorms, droughts, and heat domes for 250 years, and there has never been an accident of any sort at the tree. The most reliable arborist reports, including a recent one, declare the tree healthy with at least 50 more years of life. Tonight, we are asking council to consent to our group being allowed to nominate the Tree of Hope as a heritage tree, as such nominations cannot go forward without the consent of the owner. We also suggest that the best way to honor the 20 years of community effort to save the tree is to split the property, sell the portion with the house, and turn the tree half into a new city park. With full park designation, the city would be freed from any public safety. And the English poet William Blake said, "The tree which moves some to tears of joy is in the eyes of others only a green thing that stands in the way." Please, in your actions, do not think of the Tree of Hope as in the way, but instead as a source of joy to many Ashland citizens. And please find a way to permanently protect it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
C.C. Brown?
C.C. Brown, Ashland for 53 years. I agree with Brian, so I'll save you all for repeating what he might say. I do remember when I went to a planning commission 10 years ago, they were concerned that the Clay Street was at capacity for travel. So I don't know if you've been there or not. I don't know what a reason could be if the city won't place a 250-year-old tree on a city heritage list. They don't object to it, the tree of the year. Just one other thing. I think a wonderful excursion for grade school children would be a trip to the Cottonwood and have them talk about what happened in 1776 when the tree was born.
Thank you. Alan Sandler?
Yeah, Alan Sandler. I live in Ashland. I've been here for about 40, 41 years. Anyway, I tend to agree partially with what everybody says about saving the trees, so I'm not going to be asking you to kill a tree. I was not going to come to this hearing, but I heard that someone on the internet said, some rich man, me, wants to purchase the property and cut down the tree and build a very expensive home. To put that lie to rest, I am only wanting to purchase the property, and I've developed quite a bit of property in Ashland, because of the tree. The tree is a very big asset to people that might move in where we're talking about building. And we really, without the tree, I probably wouldn't even be interested in the property. I will work with the city to make sure that the tree is saved, because I thought it was over 100 years, about 150 years old. I didn't know it was 250. I had my arborist look at it, and he said it's very healthy, and it needs a little trimming to protect it, because if it breaks from the thing, it can start getting rot. So we could get another life on it if it's treated properly. And it needs to be protected in order to save it. Relating to me wanting to build an expensive home on the property is another lie. I will decide to either subdivide the property and put 4 to 6, only 4 to 6, very low-cost townhouses, or a low-rent apartment house for about 6 or 7 units. I haven't made that decision yet if I'm lucky enough to get the lot. The price that you have had it done at, it suits me, and it would be a cash sale. The house on the property is over 100 years old. I think it's about 120, I'm not sure, and will need to be torn down. It is so dangerous that the city will not let anyone enter the house, and the city won't, so it won't be sued. You have to sign an affidavit, which I did when I went through it, so that we wouldn't sue the city if we got hurt because something broke down and as we stepped on the steps or something. So it needs to be removed. As far as the, anyway, somebody mentioned something about the well. What we plan on doing is putting stones in it so it gets the water, but it doesn't going to be a problem. Somebody could fall in by mistake and get killed or hurt. So that would be taken care of. I do not feel I need to say anything else, except I feel if the city decides not to sell the property, they should develop it or take the sale in cash to use the money for other concepts that will work for the city, like lowering the debt or whatever you want to do with it. Thank you for letting me set this straight about me. I don't know who it was that said that, but
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
So we have a couple things we can do here, Mayor. We have 2 pieces of the code that are at play. The first being some of this stuff was continued from the last business meeting, so we need to get to it. The second being pursuant to 2.04.050, if we have a motion of the council and a 2/3 vote, we can extend the public hearings that are set for tonight, not to exceed 9:30, but we need a 2/3 vote rather than just a typical majority. And I'm recommending we do this because I think all our things from the last business meeting will then
Yes.
be.
So is that impacting this particular issue as well as the others on the list?
Yes.
Yes, okay. So the floor is open for a motion to extend the public hearing time. Councilor
Mayor,
Dale?
Happy to make a motion. Yeah, thank you. I move to extend the public hearing agenda items up into 9:30 p.m.
Second.
Is there any discussion?
No.
Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Bloom,
No.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale.
Yes.
Okay. So we will carry on now with the conversation about the Clay Street property. Everyone has spoken to us who has signed up for this issue. Are there any further questions of staff? Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah, just a clarification. I think you said that one of the other things that we need to decide is the use of the proceeds from any potential sale, and that's we have full discretion. There's no, we could dedicate that, for example, I think the packet says something about the general fund, but we could also put that aside for use in a facilities fund once that's created.
Correct. And so the property was originally purchased using general fund money. So any sale proceeds will automatically go into the general fund unless action is taken by council directing it elsewhere, in which case it'll go through a supplemental budget process at a later date.
Okay, thanks.
Councilor Duquesne?
No, I was just going to say that I was going to ask that question because I'm in agreement to take that money and set it aside for infrastructure in, for,
Councillor Bloom, question?
Happy to make a motion.
Any further questions of staff?
And I will say before a motion, I do believe we need to close the public hearing before a motion occurs.
Yes, we do. We actually didn't open it formally,
We didn't.
so I'll reopen it. I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone else signed up to speak to us?
No.
Okay, I close the public hearing. If there was an interest by the council in authorizing the application of a heritage tree designation, would that need to happen before any conversation about selling the tree?
No, as long as the city retains ownership of the property, we can make the heritage tree designation.
Okay. Okay, so we are on the conversation of the sale. If there are no additional questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Yeah, thanks. I move to authorize the sale of 380 Clay Street and restrict the proceeds of the sale to the city's capital fund.
Is there a second?
Second, may I ask, if I may
Yes.
ask Councilor Bloom, just, so the motion directed to a capital fund for the purposes of city, use on city facilities, is that what the?
Yes, correct. My understanding in conversation with the city manager is that it's referred to as the capital fund, and that is for general fund purposes,
on-
not restricted to any, utility or anything like that.
Then I'll second that facility. Yep.
Councillor Bloom?
Yeah, I appreciate all of the comments. I have no doubt that there's certainly a good cause and to save the tree. I think that there's a clear process to protect the tree further that can go to be appealed to council, and council could decide at that time, hey, we're not happy with your decision to cut down the tree, and can intervene. There's a process, there's steps in place. For me, I believe that I have a responsibility as one of 7 stewards of the city, not only now, but for future generations, that the need for housing, and especially excited by the idea of childcare, is incredibly, incredibly important. Something that is dear to me. I also just want to comment that I don't believe that the motion was seconded to extend by 8 o'clock, and so we'll see how that plays out.
Councillor Dale.
Thank you, Mayor. I too received several emails. I understand the concern. As Councilor Bloom said, it is our job to balance the needs of this community as best and as responsibly as possible. I do think housing is an urgent need here. I don't, there's a leap of faith of sorts. We've heard from potential buyers that their concerns as well. But as I was responding to these, I was also thinking about all of my house as I was sitting there answering emails. I don't know if there was a 250-year-old tree that was cut down to build the house that I was sitting in. So we just have to take that in context. And I completely understand the concern, and it will certainly be heard and respected to the best extent possible. This is what balance in the community looks like, and that's why I support it. Thank you.
Mayor?
Councillor Henson.
I'd like to offer an amendment.
Okay.
I'd like to amend this motion to authorize the sale of 380 Clay Street with a deed restriction to keep the tree.
Would you say that again?
I'd like to offer a motion to authorize the sale of 380 Clay Street with a deed restriction to keep the tree.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that for purposes of discussion.
Thanks.
Councillor Henson.
Yeah, I was moved by Mr. Sindelar's proposal and comments, and I remembered that this came up back in December, and I remember being really eager to have both, to have development on that little corner and to keep the tree. I like his ideas, proposal. Perhaps that won't happen. Mr. Sindelar may or may not do that, but there's a path forward to develop that corner and keep the tree. So that's what I propose.
Councillor Kaplan.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting idea that I think we heard everybody that spoke said that they wanted to keep the tree. One of the things that I wrestled with whether there's better protection for the tree as a publicly owned by the city, or whether it's better, by the developer of the apartment or houses. But I like it with a deed restriction so that it keeps it into perpetuity. So I'm persuaded by your logic.
I have a question. So when we talk about a deed restriction with a living tree, how would that work? Is that how that would work, or would we need to separate the parcel? Because I don't know. Typically, you would encumber a deed for in perpetuity, but
Yeah, you wouldn't, well, separating the parcel is a whole nother thing. Then you would just be keeping the tree plot. I don't know how that would work with a living organism. Like, what's the penalty that you're envisioning? Is it a reversion? Is it, I think you have to discuss what you think that restriction looks like. Like, if you're saying, first, as long as this tree exists on the property and then the tree dies, there's going to be an unjust enrichment argument on behalf of whoever, if someone purchases the property, and that the city would then go take the property because the tree died. Like, I would need to sit down and look and see if they've ever if that's been explored. I don't know off the top of my head.
Councilor Hanson.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I'm looking at the packet, and the packet just merely says with the following requirements. So, not being a land use expert at all, I'm open to modifying my amendment, but just at first blush, that would get it done. But I recognize that it's a complicated picture. So, do you have an offer, a counter suggestion, if you will?
I honestly don't. I think I didn't need to sit down and look at it because our appraised value also includes no restrictions on it. And like we discussed in previous sales, like if you're going to encumber this property, you need to know the value as it's being sold.
Well, I think if Mr. Sindler picks it up, then we're in luck. I think without any restrictions, that's his plan. But if he doesn't pick it up and we want to keep the tree, then we need to have some sort of alternative if we want to pursue this kind of restriction. So that's my proposal as of now. Like I said, I'm totally open to another alternative, but not having one.
I don't think I'm prepared to provide an alternative off the cuff. I wouldn't feel comfortable with providing that advice.
Sabrina?
I think you also run the risk of this property not selling. So the more restrictions we put on this property, the less likely we are for this to move forward. And so I think, again, the question is, what is council's goal with this action? There is much need for the capital fund. There is much need to stop using general fund money to maintain this property. So is that the priority? Is prolonging this process to ensure that the city has the tree the priority? So I think getting some clarity around the council priority would be helpful.
Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, I'm happy to provide some clarity around my priority, but actually I would like to explore an alternative formulation because I appreciate the city attorney's concern that if the tree dies, I don't think anyone's interested. I certainly, in seconding the motion, wasn't envisioning any kind of penalty if the tree dies. It's maybe it's just a restriction not to apply for tree removal for for the next 50 years or whatever. So that not to apply for tree removal. That's actionable.
That's actionable.
Well, then I think the question becomes, if the tree is significantly damaged or ill, the person has to what then? They can't address a tree that becomes a hazard?
I think we also might be putting the cart before the horse, because if that's the direction of council, it's simply, I think at this point, if that's the direction that council wants to go, the motion would be not sell at this point. We'd have to do a new appraisal and do a separate public hearing with those things in mind. So that would be, and so that's, I think, the most, and that would also give my office a bit more time to kind of look into if that's been put forward.
Yeah.
So it would be a separate public hearing on the sale with, whatever proposed encumbrances and the value.
I don't understand the process then, because we were told that we can impose restrictions without requiring a second public hearing. We're now suggesting a couple of possibilities restrictions. I think there can be some working out on that. I don't see why that requires a whole nother public hearing on a different set of requirements. Otherwise, the direction that was provided to us was erroneous.
I think it would have to do with the appraised value and what we think the value of the thing is. We listed it as an unencumbered title and the value is X. If we're changing that, I can go back and look. Again, I wasn't prepared to approach this, so I don't know. I don't want to give you bad advice off the cuff.
And I don't want to rub anybody's nose in anything, but we knew clearly that we were going into this meeting that we were going to have a lot of public input, and that there was a lot of public support for this. So it's like shame on us for not having.
Counselor, we're trying to get to an amendment here.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying,
yes.
I'm hearing pushback from city attorney, and I'm saying, well, pushing right back, saying, how come we didn't prepare some sort of alternative for us? So yes, please go back to the drawing board and tell us what we can do.
Thank you. Counselor Boone.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I think that if we were thinking about an alternative, we should have, as counselors, maybe reached out and said, hey, I'm going to be considering this, so that the city attorney would have time to prepare. 1. 2, this is an unforced error. Because we were trying to rush to get a motion on the table so that we could get through the public hearing, we didn't have a discussion that we're now trying to have, post hoc. This is a process problem, and really the cleanest thing is we should be tabling this, we should be moving on, because clearly there needs to be more discussion rather than having this back and forth right now.
I will speak to the process. The floor was not opened for a motion until the counselors around the table confirmed that they had no additional questions. Okay. There was no rushing of this process because of the 8 o'clock. There was only an extension of the process because it was 8 o'clock. So here we are. What my understanding is there is a request for an amendment to create potentially a requirement of the sale that our attorney is not sure how to construct. So the question before this body is, if there is a desire to accept this amendment and move forward with the sale with that requirement, then what that would do would be to direct our legal team to find out how that might be structured. Is that correct? If this council were to go forward with the amendment and also with the main motion?
So yeah, we'd be on the amendment first. I would want to look, even with the 50-year restriction, I would want to look and see if that's possible, given I didn't know that amendment was coming. I don't know it's ever been done with a living thing. I want to make sure that we're not steering us into a situation where in 5 years there's a diseased tree that we're arguing about unjust enrichment. I have to look out for my client. So that's where we're at. An email next time, if you want to propose an amendment, give me at least half an hour to look. I'd be happy to look.
Hey, we're supposed to come with open minds
Yeah.
and make decisions.
No, I get it.
Right, Counselor, you do not have the floor. Thank you. So we have an amendment. Is there any further discussion on the amendment? Okay. Roll call, please, on the amendment. Hold on. Yes, Counselor Duquesne?
Can we have the amendment read back to us?
Yes, please. Alyssa, can you read back the amendment?
I just have it amended to include a deed restriction to keep the tree. Is that correct?
So that would a question.
Postpone indefinitely, it can be brought back, but it's the only mechanism that I understand that basically kills both motions, tables it, and then staff can bring it back.
A motion to postpone indefinitely kills the.
Yeah, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
There's no other mechanism though.
I want to postpone it
Unless they pull the
We
motion.
can both withdraw our motions.
And I'll change my motion to table until the next meeting.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay, so go ahead, let's do it with the amendment first.
I would like to withdraw my amendment to move forward with this with the deed restriction to keep the tree.
And you agree, a second? And back to the main motion?
Yes, I withdraw my motion and move that this discussion move forward at the next council meeting.
Councilor Dale. So if the second, I've not been in this circumstance before.
Oh, the second didn't agree with that withdrawal? Then yeah, I think we should.
You keep it on?
Yeah.
Okay, so are there is there any other discussion? Councilor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. Is it possible to talk to somebody in the audience that maybe has a position?
If they want to.
Okay.
Is that, we've already closed the public hearing, and we've already
Okay,
put a
even if
motion
it
on
could
the floor.
solve the problem.
Even if it
Okay.
could solve a problem.
Thank you.
Yes. So, question back to our legal counsel. If this council decides not to sell the property tonight, what is the process for it coming back for another question?
It would be a first reading of the public hearing, sorry.
So, but if this council says no tonight, because what I'm hearing is that this council wants some more time to look into some opportunities. And the way that you would typically do that would be to say no to selling it right now. But generally, when you say no to selling something, that ends the conversation.
I don't
You
know
could
that
just bring it
that's-
back?
I don't think you could just bring it back. Yeah, I mean, it's the same, I can double check, but maybe we take 5 minutes
Mayor?
recess and go over it. But
So I think it's, two counselors can put something on the agenda. You can put it back
So
on
it
the
doesn't,
agenda.
it doesn't block us.
I would say the city manager can put something on the agenda, and I have a vested interest in divesting of this property, so I'm happy to do that.
Okay, as long as we have that understanding.
And I think
Okay.
we're all,
Yeah, I think there's actually some decent agreement here. Councilor Bloom.
Yeah, I was just going to say, per my earlier comment, I think that this is a perfect example of why we should have a special meeting next week and we get through these items. That gives us a week times for.
Councilor, we have
attorney-
another item on the agenda.
Yeah, there's a lot.
Let's
There's a
please
lot.
keep our comments to the agenda item in question. Are there any other comments or discussion? Councilor Sherrill.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I think this is just another good example of why housing is so expensive, because it gets kicked down the road and down the road and down the road. The city couldn't take this tree down. We had not-for-profit, respected developers that couldn't take this tree down. We have a local developer with a good track record that says he's going to keep the tree, and we're just prolonging. Every day there's holding costs. This is why housing is so expensive.
Okay. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill,
And it's on the main motion.
on the main motion.
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan,
no.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson.
No.
Motion passed.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we're going to take a 5-minute break. We're actually going to come back at 8:25 by this side clock. We'll go back to the top of the public hearing section. So we are at first reading and public hearing of Ordinance 3282, creating Section 2.55 of the Ashland Municipal Code, disposal of real property.
No, you're okay. I'll just go ahead and jump in. You guys know me. I don't need to do an introduction. I do want to make one quick correction, though. In the packet, it says that this was approved at first reading, and as you'll recall, we did a discussion of two different versions of this proposed code change, and that should read, put forth the legal version for first reading, not, it was approved. First reading was approved. So as you guys will all remember here, the legal department essentially consolidated the relevant portions of Chapter 271 and Chapter 221. This was done essentially to promote administrative efficiency, as well as, obviously be transparent, which is one of council's stated goals to the public as to how the city deals with the sale of real property. So as this last hearing, this code was not in place, we just simply followed the statute as it is. This incorporates that portion of the statute into code. I will note, however, that per council's direction, there was a little bit of home rule change, and that's going to be at section 2.55020, section 3. We added in the non-exhaustive list of factors just to provide guidance for future councils. You guys had discussed things you would like to see, and so we put that list in there to provide some guidance as to what that meant, since the statute itself is rather short in definitions. But I feel like we discussed it pretty well last time, so I'd just ask if there were any questions.
Yes. Questions? Councillor Duquesne.
Thank you. Thank you, legal. So I had a question when I read through this, and I know that we already have the city ordinance. My question, looking at what's already in place, that's state law, and looking at this, and I remember we kind of went back and forth last time, and I did see some good stuff in here about lease with option to buy, things like that, and selling off things by parcel. But I wanted to know, how would this ordinance, if this does come up in front of council, and it's all over social media about the possible sale of City Hall, how would this ordinance affect the sale of City Hall if that were to come up?
It would simply just be the same process that we would follow like we would with any other property.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions? The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Dale.
Well, actually, Mayor, just a point, do we need to open the public?
Oh. We've been talking about this for so long. I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up since the last time I asked?
No.
Thank you. I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Dale.
I move to approve first reading of 3282, an ordinance creating section 2.55 of the Ashland Municipal Code, disposal of real property, and move to a second reading during the March 17th, 2026 council meeting.
Is there a second?
Second that.
Councillor Dale?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councillor Hanson? 18th. Councillor Hanson, did you have any?
I said no, thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? Okay, roll call, please. Alyssa?
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
No.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak with us on any of the other public hearing items? Okay, so given that, we will continue in order. Moving on to the first reading and public hearing of Ordinance 3295, amending AMC 14.02 Utility Systems, Customer Accounting Policies.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. I can go ahead and take this one as well here. So this we mentioned during the quarterly financial update last time, when Bryn, or Deputy Interim Director Morrison was referring to essentially the amount of delinquent accounts. And what we started doing is looking at the process of. Okay.
What was that, Councilor Kaplan?
Oh, yeah, okay. Sorry. All right. So essentially, we started looking at the process as to how the city was going after these delinquent accounts, the appeals process and that, and we noticed that there was just a ton of stuff in there that was way expansive of what the OARs were requiring. And so we wanted to streamline that process, especially now that we have, a municipal court judge who's hearing these things. Council is no longer, the appeals aren't being brought to council, and really just make it, one, more efficient for staff for utility billing, two, to bring it into line with our new billing software when that comes into place, have it automatically put in there, really simplify it, and then three, make it very clear to the public, here's the process, here's how you go through it, to help hopefully prevent people from falling so far behind on these mechanisms. Carmel went ahead, because I think there's been one or two, utility termination appeals, and she went through all the steps that people have to go through and the amount of things that are just unnecessary. So this is essentially streamlining that. I believe that Bryn also included the policy which relates to that. Just ill timing, this has nothing to do with rates or anything like that. This is just essentially process to try and streamline the delinquency process.
Any further questions? Councilor Kaplan.
Yeah. Just trying to call it up. I can't. So I've got a couple of questions. First of all, I appreciate the work to streamline it. Once I saw your strikeouts and things, it clearly had a lot of things that could be out. But I've got a couple of specific concerns. One, from my reading of it, section 14.020.030 seems to suggest that there's 10 days notice for shutoff by email or by U.S. mail, depending on how the customer has asked to be notified. But currently, we have a two-step process. That seems to be a one-step process. Once they're overdue, there's a possibility of going straight to a 10-day notice of shutoff. Whereas currently, we have a two-step process where there's a notice of delinquency, and then after, it seems to me that that's a good alert, and then give somebody a 10-day notice after that for a for possible shutoff. So why did the staff decide to truncate it from what was a very long process to something that seems to me that could be simply you're overdue 10 days after your account is overdue, you could be shut off.
Yeah. So and I could bring Director
And
Morrison.
let me just to build on that a little bit. If somebody's traveling and they're getting their bills by mail, the U.S. mail takes 2 days to get up to Portland and back. You could chew up a whole bunch of that time. It just seems like we're going a little bit too fast here. So I'd like to get some understanding of that. A second question. I don't know, Bryn, do I need to say it again? The second question is, why have we lifted the restriction on terminating service a day before a weekend or a holiday? That's part of the strikeouts, and that's not put into the new text. And then I'd like some clarity. This, I think, is...
So let's do the first two questions first.
Yeah?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay,
Yeah.
and so I'll kind of talk and then Bryn can fill in where I miss. But so essentially it's the 10-day thing is after a bill is past due. So when you're receiving the bill in the mail, you still have, time to get it in before the due date. So this is not you get your bill, you got 10 days, that sort of thing. It's an extension of past the due date.
Yeah, I understand.
And then the notice requirements, there's a phone portion as well. So this is not just...
I don't see that in the... Could you point me to it? Because I don't see it in the language. All I see it as a 10-day notice of shutoff.
Yeah, so go ahead.
So what we tried to do was fall in line with Oregon law and put into our ordinance in accordance with Oregon law. That does not mean that it's going to lessen what our activity is Right now, it is 7 to 10 days. That hasn't changed. So when a bill is generated, it's due and payable upon receipt. However, we do put the due date on that. When that next bill is generated is their first notice, because it would say past due. Then the delinquent process starts, and then the notice is sent letting them know that 10 days, they have 10 days to make a payment, get a payment arrangement, reach out for utility assistance. So that's that step. And within that window also, we continue to use our IVR system as the notification. The IVR is not in anything that we currently have that we're amending here.
What's the IVR?
It's the interactive voice response system, the call out. So we still intend on using those mechanisms. This just simplifies it and brings it into accordance with Oregon law. So it's not so much, so many steps that unfortunately what we've found is makes it longer term and folks get further and further behind.
Yeah, no, I'm totally on board with, not allowing
Sure.
things to drag out for 6 months and having a huge bill that much, it's hard to work out.
Right.
But I guess I don't understand from the text of the ordinance that's before us that there's no notice of shut off until after the next bill is generated. That's new information for me. That's not what it says here in the text. It doesn't say that's not the case. It just doesn't say that. So what my reading of this, you were out in the other room, is that it's possible to send a shut off notice as soon as it's past due. You get a notice, you have 3 weeks to pay. It's due, let's say, the 30th of the month. According to this, the city could issue a shut-off notice with 10 days' notice for the 10th of the next month. You're telling me that that's not the case.
No, that is the case currently also. We do have, prior to this, we only have to give 7 to 10 days. We are not required to do the IVR. So the notice is the door hanger that we do right now. What we are proposing is it actually becomes a letter that is mailed. So it's the same time period. Instead of a door hanger, it is actually an official letter. So right now, a door hanger and a letter goes out. What we're saying is that it's the same time period, but it's going to be a letter. For instance, for those folks that may be on vacation and they aren't there to see a door hanger hanging on the door. So it's going to their email, however they have chosen for us to correspond with them. Hopefully, we encourage folks, email is the best way because they can get it when they're on vacation. Does that help?
And I guess I should point out, and I meant to mention this at the beginning, this is similar to the sale of real property in that we kind of took down the ordinance to what was required by the OARs or what was required by Oregon law. And then the policy, though, is still fully in effect. We were just clarifying this part, streamlining the appeals process, but the policy is still in effect. Like, we're still, doing all the necessary steps or the steps that work with the utility billing part. That'll allow for change, like I said, when the billing software rolls in, because that'll be automated alerts that are sent out. The system will just know rather than rely on individuals, I guess.
And I'm sorry, I didn't hear the second question when I was coming to walk in.
There's a elimination, one of the strike-throughs is the restriction on cutoff the day before or during the weekend or holiday. And I don't see that in the red line.
That would be part of our policy also. Because we don't offer 24/7 service, they would have to call the electric department after hours, so we would just continue that we would not do shut-offs. We don't have staff to do shut-offs on the weekend, so therefore we wouldn't be going out and doing it on the weekend.
And I should note, just because I found this out recently, is that when they go to do a shut-off after all the notices and door hangers and whatever methods have been done, there's still a lot of considerations that also aren't in this ordinance, but I know recently there was shut-offs that were canceled for weeks because of the cold weather. Correct. So this is not a must shut it off within 10 days of notice. This is just, again, kind of clarifying the ordinance and making that more obvious.
In the policy that you're pointing to, that you say adds some process to the ordinance, that's approved, and how is that changed? Is that a council policy, or is that a staff policy?
Staff policy.
And what's the oversight on that from the council? You cite the utility assistance policy that is in accordance with a council resolution, and I don't see the council resolution that this corresponds to. Yeah, so it suggests to me that there's not the same sort of
Best practice.
not the same
regarding-
sort of
Yeah.
council
Shut-offs.
oversight
Yeah.
for.
So this, what we are working off of right now is the revisions to the utility billing standard practice after COVID, recognizing that we had to extend larger payment plans for customers that were farther behind. So this has changed over the years. And one of the pieces of this was that when we make changes to this policy, we will notify you all of the changes because, hopefully within the next several months, we don't have anyone that is $5,000, $10,000 behind on their utility bills. So we have had to evolve this policy over the last 5 years to be able to help customers, but also to maintain our fiduciary responsibility. So there is payment plans, there is using the IVR, there is the cold weather. That is a different resolution that we do not, when we reach that cold temperature, we do not pursue shutoffs. We do basically a second notice and let them know that they were scheduled for shut off, but due to the conditions, we would not be. That's not in the ordinance either. Those are just some examples.
Councilor Blue?
Yeah, if I may, to Councilor Kaplan's question about oversight. So I think that the idea with what we're talking about, like in the code change group, is how do we streamline process? How do we keep the ordinances simple and then allow resolutions and internal policies to guide? Now, to the question about oversight, one of the proposals that has been put forward is in Title I that requires all administrative rules and all internal staff policies. The council does not only get informed by it, but we have the ability to basically revoke it and say, no, this isn't appropriate. This is not the direction we want to go. So when you have those protections built in, and let's say that a future staff is like, let's, forget these people. We don't want to help them. Council would have a mechanism to basically intervene and say, no, that's not in keeping with what we're trying to do.
So Councilor, did you have any other questions? Other questions? Councilor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. Bren, I had a question regarding under fiscal impact, and it has utility billing receivables, and it has amount on payment plans or without payment plans. Who pays this? Because this is on the delinquency that's already delinquent. If you look under fiscal impact, the two columns, can you explain that to me?
So the total receivable is the total amount that we bill, and that includes current charges that are not past due. Then the total delinquency is another number, all the past due. Of those past due amounts, we have some folks that are on payment plans that are making payments towards their outstanding balance. And then we have some folks that are not on payment plans, and they would be subject to the delinquent processing.
Okay,
Does that
thank you.
help?
That makes sense.
Sure.
So following up behind Councilor Bloom's mention of the structure that we're going through right now, where we're trying to take some of this detail out and put it in resolution form, is because we haven't had that up to this point. It's been in ordinance form. Is there a possibility for us to have that in a resolution form that has a little bit deeper level to kind of address some of Councilor Kaplan's questions? Because we've stripped a whole bunch out of this, right?
You would like all of our standard procedures in an ordinance?
No.
No?
No.
I mean,
No.
excuse me, a resolution?
Well, I'm just wondering, because in this larger process of streamlining, that's what we've been saying, is that we want our ordinances to tie back to state law, to reference back to state law rather than specific elements, and to take the details out of the ordinances so that they can be changed more frequently, but changed more frequently by resolution of council, not necessarily having to dig into the ordinance. But I think that's a question tonight, because I think there is a strong interest because of the interface with utility systems and our public. And I'm hearing that there is some interest in the council understanding some of these elements about when would we shut people off as a standard policy, so that, I think, to the point of somebody else 10 years down the line takes over the space and says, well, this is all I have to do is what's in this ordinance, and I could just change these internal policies. And now all of a sudden you have a question for council where council doesn't have necessarily the ability to reach in, and we wouldn't want them reaching in and kind of micromanaging at the staff level, but otherwise there's no lever. And so that's what I'm wondering, is in this structure, are we looking to do that in the same way we have some of the other ordinances where we've said we're going to deal with that flexibility in resolution form?
I think my question is, what policy question are we trying to answer with this resolution? Because the utility billing policy is an operational element. It's not like a council set policy. So I think, Bryn has relayed that our process has not changed in terms of timing with shutoffs, but we are trying to simplify the process for the customers as well as the city, so we don't end up racking up huge delinquencies. So I think if you could help us better understand kind of what problem we're trying to solve with that resolution, that can better help guide us.
Councilor Dale.
Yeah, I think we'll see if this is a way through this potentially for both staff and council. So I would start by asking the both of you and Bryn. So if I understand the problem statement here is that we're changing some things to make ordinances simpler, of course, but there's a bit of a potential oversight that's concerning, or that is potential concern, rightfully so. What would you certainly have utility policies already docked up, right? I mean, they're there. So would it be something that, I don't think it would take too much staff work, but correct me if I'm wrong, if this council chooses to approve a first reading, that those policies would be included in the packet for the second reading just for a review, and if something just goes that this doesn't see and we go, yeah, I don't understand, then maybe we could pause. But I think what might happen is council may see the policies side by side and have some time to review it before a second reading to feel comfortable. And then, of course, as Councilor Bloom and the mayor had noted, we're getting to that process as part of our code review and how we do that. So I don't know if that would add a level of comfort to this council, but is that something that might be just include the current policies so that council can see, or?
Well, the current policy is in the packet. So are you talking about something else?
Maybe I just missed it. Okay, then I retract everything I said because I had scrolled and stopped. And okay, so then, yeah, no, I don't.
I would point out just one thing, and I'm sorry if I didn't say this either. It also is limiting the appeals process. So it's not just, like, everything in here is not going right back into policy.
Right,
so
right.
There were other changes, like the appeals process, where it's no longer going to the committee, and then so it just goes to the judge who has the, the law, and it's just like, hey, you followed it, no, you didn't,
Yep. Yep.
And at a future time, if there was an issue, say somebody else came in and made some internal policy changes that really caused a big ruckus, people would come into this space and the staff would be looking to solve it, even without the council having necessarily the ability to reach in and touch at that detail level.
Yeah, I think our biggest issue, and that's been raised rightly so by council, is why are we as city staff allowing people to fall so far behind? And so this is us trying to address that in a way that streamline the process both internally, but also for the customer to not have to go to a committee and then to a judge, and then and so that we can move that process along for them, get them on the payment plan or whatever needs to happen more quickly. So we're not, because, there's that needle to thread with, we have to keep our utilities solvent or rates go up for everybody who is paying. Yeah. And so we also want to be, aware that customers need consideration. And so the resolution about not shutting off in the cold, like that still stands, that doesn't go anywhere. And so that's why I said, if there's a problem that we're trying to solve right now, I think we can put it in a resolution. I just need more detail around what we're trying to solve to help guide that.
I think it's more heading things off in the future. Councilor Kaplan.
I totally support the objective of trying to get to resolution quicker and not dragging it out so that bills accumulate, so that debts accumulate. I wonder how much discretion the policy or the ordinance actually gives to the billing staff. For example, one of the things that I've heard as difficulties is that there's in a way a perverse incentive to actually have a higher delinquency. So for example, if you have if you owe $900, you've got 6 months to pay. If you owe $1,001, you've got 12 months to pay. Or let me make that more stark. If you owe $999, you've got 6 months to pay. So you can pay that over 6 monthly payments. If you owe $1,001, you've got 12 months to pay, much more affordable monthly payments. So I'm wondering what staff are doing to try to provide some discretion, try to make it possible for our customers to actually take on board a payment plan that they can afford, rather than be stuck on some of these rigid rules.
So the payment plans that are offered, you get to pick. So say, for instance, if you are $4,000 outstanding, you can pick to pay it off sooner. But we had to land on something, some sort of threshold to get us started. So when a payment plan goes out for signature from the customer, they do have up to 4 options for how they pay that back. But we had to come up with some sort of mechanism to allow a structure going forward.
So I guess
what this does is it does provide that fairness across the board to, and the equal treatment of all. But unfortunately, we had to have some sort of threshold for the dollar. So like you're absolutely right. Somebody that does owe $999 versus $1,001 is a 6 months difference.
Right. So I want to keep the conversation on the ordinance because that's in our staff level policies. Are there any other questions on the ordinance itself? Okay, I will open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this?
No, ma'am.
I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Bloom?
I move to approve first reading of ordinance 3295 and move it to second reading during the next scheduled meeting.
Second.
Councilor Bloom?
No.
Councilor Dale?
Just very briefly, serving on the Utilities Appeals Committee, staff has been in very difficult positions in this, and it is hard. So being able to codify this and for us to be able to review potential changes to utility billing policies, this is the right way to do this, in my opinion.
Further discussion? Councilor Kaplan?
Yeah, as I said, I totally support. I mean, I think frankly, it's appalling that what's happened, and no blame, but that people have gotten behind, in the thousands and thousands of dollars, and it becomes absolutely impossible. So what I'm looking for is something that makes it easier for folks to, get on a reasonable payment plan, and get timely notice that they're delinquent, because I've also talked with people that said that their account was going, through a credit card that was no longer active, so they didn't even realize because it was on automatic pay, and then all of a sudden they were stuck with a couple $1,000 bill. But I'm looking for timely notice, follow up by staff, rules that allow that, not for premature shut off, and then reasonable payment plans that people can actually afford. If somebody's stuck with a $999 bill and they've got to pay that off in 6 months, it's a lot harder for them to stay up to date than if we allow them to pay that over 12 months. So we actually exacerbate the problem, make it worse, and I'd like to see some flexibility on that as well, because I think what we all have interest in as a municipal utility is we want to serve our residents, our citizens of Ashland. We want people to be able to pay, and when people fall on hard times, we want to make sure that they've got the best terms. We want to be able to connect them with the social service organizations that can provide some assistance, and I know we do that with St. Vincent de Paul and Access and ORA and others. But I want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to be compassionate and to follow up on that, and that we don't just fall back on it's either we let them go completely and then they're stuck with a $5,000 bill and we get in a terrible situation, or we there's got to be a happy medium where we're following up appropriately, giving people proper notice, and then giving them reasonable payment terms.
Councillor Duquesne.
I'll be brief. I agree with my colleague, Councillor Kaplan. I think when people get in situations like this, everybody's situation is different. Some people need a little bit more attention than others. Others, that email or that mail, the letter in the mail might be sufficient, but I believe we need to do our due diligence and don't just do that blanket statement. Some people need a little bit more, and I believe we are just enabling a situation to be worse at this breakdown that we have right now. So I'd like more.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you, Bryn. I appreciate all the
Thank
good
you.
work we are doing here to get that structure in place, and looking forward to seeing where that takes us. I will just remind council, we still have a significant list here. If we can make sure that we stay to the point as we go through the rest of the next half an hour or so, and see how many of these we can get through with adequate deliberation. We move on now to the public hearing and first reading of the following ordinance language changes. Starting with 3288, an ordinance creating 15.04.270 to prohibit permits when code violations are outstanding.
Okay, and just so council's aware, all of the ones we're going to discuss now were ones that were brought to you as part of Table 3 and then again brought through this small group discussion. So those have gone through those two initial things. So 3288, essentially this change is going to make it so no building permits shall be issued when there's active code compliance issues. The goal is that the projects and property essentially are responsible for keeping up as they continue to develop. It sounds like from Director Goldman that there would be outstanding code violations on a property, yet they would still be getting new permits. And so this is to hopefully correct that.
Questions? Seeing no questions, I open go ahead, Councillor Sherrill.
Yeah, I noticed, thank you, in the language, there was some discretion that it didn't say shall, it said should. I believe, like, for an example, if somebody, didn't get a fence permit and they're trying to get an HVAC replaced and they can't get that replaced and they can't afford to update their fence to meet the current standard of a permit they applied for. Was there any do you remember any discussion with Community Development Director on that?
I don't remember discussion specifically, but I know Brandon is always kind of looking out for really making it to when it matters. So it may be if it's a major code, I don't know if you remember, Sabrina.
Yeah, so letter C, you can authorize a permit when necessary to abate hazardous or unsafe conditions. So in that case, not having.
Yeah, the can and shall. Can is something we see. Again, that language on its face is like it doesn't say they have to. But we feel like we can move forward with that in good faith. Thank you.
Any other questions? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this issue?
No.
I close the public hearing. With no more questions, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
I move to approve the first reading of Ordinance 3288, an ordinance creating 15.04.270 to prohibit permits when code violations are outstanding, and schedule for a second reading at the next scheduled meeting.
Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Bloom?
No.
Counselor Sherrill?
No, thank you.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We now move on to 3289, an ordinance updating 15.36.030 to correct for the proper department that assigns frontage.
Yep, so basically this removes the word recorder and just leaves it as the city because either Public Works or Community Development are really in charge of this, not Alyssa.
Questions of staff? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to us to speak with us on this issue?
No.
I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Sherrill?
Thanks, Mayor. I move to approve the first reading of 3298, an ordinance amending, 3289, an ordinance amending 15.36.030 to correct for the proper department that assigns frontage, and move for a second reading at the March 17th council meeting.
Second.
Councilor Sherrill? Councilor Dale?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Bloom,
I did.
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Duquesne.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We move on now to 3290, an ordinance amending 9.08.1703 to create certain exemptions for heat pumps or mechanical devices from noise regulation.
Okay, and I believe Director Goldman actually spoke to this in front of the council, but essentially it's creating an exemption for heat pumps and air conditioners, which are not generally manufactured to meet the decibel level that's required. And so in areas where the houses are close together or on small lots, they're just unable to meet that. So they're providing an exemption from that noise regulation.
Questions of staff? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this issue?
No.
I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Dale?
I move to approve first reading of Ordinance 3290, an ordinance amending 9.08.1703 to create certain exemptions for heat pumps or mechanical devices from noise regulation, and schedule a correction and move it to a second reading during the March 17, 2026 council meeting.
Second.
Councilor Dale?
No, thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Duquesne?
No.
Any further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson,
Yes.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan.
Yes.
Motion passed.
We are now to 3291, an ordinance amending 13.16.035 to require property owners to remove or prune dangerous trees without a permit.
Sorry. Yeah, so this has come up, the pruning thing has come up in several different accounts, and this one particularly deals with the city formerly would require people to get a permit to remove a tree or prune a tree even when we were requiring them to do so. So essentially we're saying prune your tree, also it's going to be $50 for the permit or whatever the cost is. So we're removing the requirement. If the city directs you to prune or remove a tree, you don't have to obtain a permit to do that action.
Further questions of staff? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone asked to speak on this issue?
No.
I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councilor Hanson?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve first reading of 3291, an ordinance amending 13.16.035 to require property owners to remove or prune dangerous trees without a permit, and move it to second reading during the March 3rd, 26 council meeting.
March 17th.
Thank you.
Is there a second? Okay, Councilor Hanson? Councilor Duquesne?
No.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill,
Yes.
Dale,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Kaplan,
Yes.
Duquesne,
Yes.
Hanson.
Yes.
Motion passed.
Thank you. We are now to the last of the first reading items, 3292, an ordinance amending Chapter 6 to reflect marijuana retail regulations.
Yeah, so on this, there was a bit of discussion relating to the use of the term cannabis rather than marijuana. Council agreed that, I believe agreed that When discussing, they would refer to it as cannabis. However, because of the OLCC and the state requirements still referring to the legality as marijuana, we're going to leave it for now until that changes, despite the really bad history associated with the term. But essentially, this change here just removes medical and adds retailers throughout. So it's been the change since the code was last put in place, and now there are retailers.
Questions of staff? I open the public hearing. Alyssa, has anyone signed up to speak to us on this issue?
No.
I close the public hearing. The floor is open for a motion. Councillor Kaplan.
I move approval of ordinance number 3292, an ordinance amending AMC Chapter 6.50 to reflect marijuana detail regulations and move it to second reading at the next meeting.
Yes, I mean. Second.
Councillor Kaplan. Councillor Duquesne.
No.
Okay. Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Motion passed.
We are now to ordinances and contracts. The second reading of the following ordinance language changes, starting with 3271, an ordinance establishing an office of the city recorder in the creation of AMC 2.28.530.
Thank you, Mayor. This change was made because the city recorder is now an appointed position.
Questions of staff?
Yeah, I've got
Councilor
a process question. Because it's second reading, can't we do this as a batch?
There is one with a small change that was made relating to
Could we set that one aside and
fees.
batch these?
I think we could, yeah.
Which one?
The electric system regulations would need to be taken separate.
3287. I'm sorry.
3287.
Okay.
Okay. So, opening the public,
No, it's second reading, so you're
oh, no,
just-
it's not
yeah,
second reading.
you just-
So
So we'll need
council
to,
would make a motion that would include all of these except for 3287.
Correct, you would read them all and still read the title.
So I still need to read all the titles.
It's a long motion.
So if there is, I'm going to just give me a head nod if people would like to do the group, except for the one that has a change in it. Would we like to do that all together? Okay, I'm going to initiate that agenda item then with this. Second reading of the following ordinance language changes, 3271, an ordinance establishing an office of the city recorder in the creation of AMC 2.28.530, 3283, an ordinance amending and updating Chapter 2.29, Public Art, 3284, an ordinance amending AMC 2.54.010 to align with procurement limits, 3285, an ordinance amending AMC 2.62.030 to provide for a chain of command in the event of an emergency. 3286, an ordinance amending 9.08.120 to prevent property owners from keeping hazardous or infested trees. 3293, an ordinance amending 9.08.170.d.2 to refer to 9.16.070 for dog nuisance matters. And 3294, an ordinance amending 9.16.070 to distinguish between daytime versus nighttime dog noise.
Any questions on any of those for second reading?
Questions of staff? Okay, the floor is open for a motion. Councillor Bloom.
Thank you. I move to approve second reading of the following ordinances. 3271, an ordinance establishing an office of the city recorder in the creation of AMC 2.28.530. 3283, an ordinance amending and updating Chapter 2.29, Public Art. 3284, an ordinance amending AMC 2.54.010 to align with procurement limits. 3285, an ordinance amending AMC 2.62.030 to provide for a chain of command in the event of an emergency. 3286, an ordinance amending 9.08.120 to prevent property owners from keeping hazardous and infested trees. 3293, an ordinance amending 9.08.170.d2 to refer to 9.16.070 for dog nuisance matters. 3294, an ordinance amending 9.16.070 to distinguish between daytime versus nighttime dog noise.
Is there a second?
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Okay. Counselor Bloom?
No.
Counselor Hanson? Discussion? In the discussion, I would just like to thank Counselor Bloom. Well called. Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Motion's passed.
And now we have our final second reading for the following ordinance language changes. 3287, an ordinance amending and updating Chapter 14.12, electric system regulations with the adjustment in 14.12.020 as read by staff.
Yeah, and so just so everyone recalls, everything was approved for first reading, basically switching to list the Public Utilities Commission and requiring all of their rules, as well as referencing the ESR for prescriptive details. There was a change to 14.12.020, construction and temporary service. There is a charge for temporary service for new construction requiring only a service drop and meter setting in an amount to be set by resolution of the council. So that was the proposed change, basically referring to the miscellaneous fees.
Great. Questions? Counselor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. So I have a question, Johan. When you talk about, I read in there and you mentioned it, the temporary fee for the location of the meter, and is that for new structures only regarding a location of the meter and not for structures that are already in place permanent?
Correct.
Okay, thank you. And if I can really quick. And then also the electric service manual, as opposed to
spelling out all the requirements that were in there, because that manual updates regularly, they're referencing it as essentially this is where you go to find the rules or the requirements.
Exactly, thank you.
Other questions? Floor is open for a motion. Counselor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor. I move to approve second reading of Ordinance 3287, an ordinance amending and updating Chapter 14.12 Electric System Regulations with the following change of Section 1, 14.12.020, Construction and Temporary Service. There is a charge for temporary service for new construction requiring only a service drop and meter setting in an amount to be set by resolution of the council.
Is there a second?
Second.
Counselor Dale?
Thank you, Mayor.
Counselor Bloom?
No.
Further discussion? Roll call, please, Alyssa.
Hanson?
Yes.
Sherrill?
Yes.
Dale?
Yes.
Bloom?
Yes.
Kaplan?
Yes.
Duquesne?
No.
Motion passed.
Okay. We do not have unfinished business or new business this evening. We just got through a lot of other business. And so we are now to the city manager report. Sabrina.
I didn't think we'd make it, but here we are. So I want to go to the look ahead first because I have a question for council. So originally, during the budget process, there was direction for the budget committee and the council to reconvene. And we have that tentatively scheduled for March 16th. We are getting kind of updated numbers in terms of insurance and things like that, which are going to affect us the next fiscal year. So I would like to push that reconvening off a bit to be able to have a clearer financial picture, because my read right now is we're going to need to make some mid-budget adjustments in terms of staffing and service delivery. So I would like to have a little more time to firm that up. So wondering thoughts on that.
Councilor Bloom?
How much time?
I would like to maybe look at this around May 4th.
Just my thoughts on that. I'm not opposed, I think, as long as we kind of do this before the actual midpoint is my preference. I think that was the original intent anyways, so.
Yeah. So we'll be, May 4th, we still have 2 months before July 1, really. So I think that would just let us have a more fruitful discussion on what we're looking at. So head nod would be cool. Okay. I got two.
Any concerns?
Yeah,
Are there
okay.
any concerns with that change?
Okay.
Nope.
No concerns.
Yes.
Yes.
Is there something that we're waiting for? Is that why, like, is there invoices coming in? Is there expenses that we don't expect? Like, is there a
So
reason
it's
why we're
really
waiting?
our insurance renewal numbers for staff. So our health insurance.
And do we have projections on those yet, or we need to wait for them?
We need to wait for them. Right now, they're significantly higher than estimated, even what the insurance industry was estimating. So I would like to have a more thoughtful discussion, because history has they estimate way high and then drop it back down. There's an inclination it may not drop back down, and so that's going to have a significant impact. And so I want to just get some clarity on that prior to that discussion, because that is a big impact to our personnel line.
Thank you.
Another question.
Councillor Hanson?
What is it like in the public sphere with negotiation or pushback, or when you say that oftentimes estimates are high but then they're not? Is it like a process? Do you need? Assuming you need this time to discuss, is there any negotiation, or is it just we're just waiting, we're passive? How active are we, our participants? In
So
this?
we have insurance brokers who assist us, but we are in the CIS pool.
Right.
So there's a bit of a passive element there. And so we're kind of waiting for CIS to firm up their numbers to better understand if that's the direction we're still going to maintain, or if we
Okay.
need to take a look again. And so it's just early in the season for that. And healthcare is a big question nationwide, the expense of it. And so that is going to have impacts on us. So I need more information before we can really kind of navigate the situation. But we are not immune to the effects that are happening in the broader sphere. And so staff is monitoring that and watching it, and I am continually thinking about how we best serve this community and remain solvent moving forward. And so we already had some difficult discussions coming up. I don't see that changing, quite honestly. So we'll continue to work on that, but I think for the next fiscal year, we're going to need to have some more information and do some more analysis and thought into how we want to talk about that with the wider group.
Councillor Kaplan?
Sabrina, you're talking about health insurance. Does a policy year, health insurance policy year coincide with our fiscal year or the calendar year? Or something else?
Calendar year.
Calendar year. So would any kind of increase would go into effect January 1st, 2027?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
But at the same time, everything is getting more expensive. So there's just a lot happening. It's a great time. Okay. So next time we will be talking about strat plan. We'll have the public engagement process. Our consultants will be coming in through Zoom. And then wastewater and stormwater rate discussion as well for March 16th. And then you all just pushed a whole bunch of second readings to March 17th. So buckle up. More ordinances are coming. We will have RVTD here to present about a levy that they're going to go out for. And then some wayfinding sign design questions for you all to pick your poison in terms of how those look. In terms of other things going on, thankful to our streets crew during our one snow event this year to keep us all moving. I got stuck in the snow. That's a little embarrassing. Okay. I dug myself out though. I did not call for help. Just a reminder, City Councilor office hours are in the Grove moving forward. And if you would like office hours with the city manager, that is by appointment now. And then our play guide for the winter is out online. We did receive a grant to get some new washer and dryers for Station 2 for our firefighters to clean their gear, so that's exciting. Sorry, the spring play guide, winter spring play guide is out. And then just a welcome, we have a new Deputy Police Chief, John Lorfink, who will be over operations. So Deputy Chief Mullen will be over our kind of records and administrative side. So we are excited to have that new team member on board. Great. That feels like enough.
Councillor Duquesne?
Thank you, Mayor. City Manager mentioned office hours for counselors, and I am fortunate to have community members come to see me, but this March 5th, I will not be available. So please feel free to email me if we miss each other, and we'll arrange another time. Thank you.
And I just want to announce that I will be attending the next meeting by Zoom. I'm on now the Finance Administration and Intergovernmental Relations Advocacy Committee for the National League of Cities, and they're having their conference. So Council Chair Dale will be leading the team through the next couple of meetings in mid-March, but I will attend by Zoom. Any updates from council liaisons? Okay. The floor is open for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Meeting is adjourned.